Mr. Speaker, the Tories shamefully left the gender pay gap persistently high. Does the Secretary of State agree that Labour's childcare expansion, free breakfast clubs and new nurseries will drive up women's incomes and work choices because they are disproportionately more affected by caring responsibilities?
Mr. Speaker, I agree with my honourable friend. This Labour government is determined to make sure that all women have choices where it comes to balancing work and family life. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, we are expanding access to childcare through new free breakfast clubs, new primary-based nurseries, and I'm delighted that in my own friend's constituency, his constituents will benefit from one of those new free breakfast clubs.
Perpetrators hanging around school, malicious contact with customers and rat poison being sent to my constituents' homes are all frightening experiences faced by victims of domestic abuse. But police responses are inconsistent even when perpetrators are on bail. What is the Minister doing to work with other departments to ensure everyone in the system, from call handlers to CPS workers, have training on the forms of non-violent abuse to make sure that children and women are protected?
I'm grateful to the Honourable Lady who raises some incredibly important points and shines a light on the experiences of victims in her constituency. This government is determined to halve violence against women and girls. That's why, as my honourable friend the Minister set out earlier, we're taking a range of actions right across government. We, of course, are always happy to consider further areas where action is needed so that all women and girls are able to live free from abuse and intimidation within our society.
Dr. Becky Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week we celebrate the International Day of Midwives. Midwives are an essential part of ending inequity in maternal health, delivering life-saving community-based care. Will the Minister please commit to working with the Minister for Health to ensure that our 10-year health strategy and NHS workforce plan puts in adequate resources into overstretched maternity units in many often deprived parts of our country?
Yes, I'm happy to give my honourable friend that commitment. I know how seriously the Health Secretary takes this issue because he knows, as I do, that too many women have been failed by poor maternal care, enduring traumatic experiences, and all women deserve safe, compassionate care in those very difficult, often quite difficult times that they can experience. That's why we are committed to training thousands more midwives, and through our NHS 10-year plan, we will ensure that there is equitable access right across the country for all women as they experience pregnancy and childbirth.
We now come to Prime Minister's questions. Matt Bishop.
Question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rising tensions between India and Pakistan will be of serious concern for many across Britain. We are engaging urgently with both countries, as well as other international partners, encouraging dialogue, de-escalation and the protection of civilians. Mr. Speaker, Britain will fall silent tomorrow to mark the anniversary of VE Day. It is a day to remember our greatest generation, whose courage and selflessness won a victory over tyranny and evil. Past and present, the service of our armed forces defends our freedom, protects the values that we stand for, and makes this country so proud. Mr. Speaker, the landmark deal we've secured with India is a huge win for working people in this country. After years of negotiation, this government has delivered in months, slashing tariffs, boosting wages, unleashing opportunities for UK businesses. It's the biggest trade deal the UK has delivered since we left the EU. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 2018, my constituent Richard Wellington was diagnosed with a glioblastoma and given just 12 months to live. Against the odds, he's still with us today. He knows his time is limited, however, and is determined to leave a legacy by improving brain cancer treatment for others. His courage is inspiring and shows extraordinary resilience. But, Mr. Speaker, patients with brain tumours fell through the cracks in our healthcare system under the Conservatives, and this must end. Will the Prime Minister set out how Labour will speed up cancer diagnosis and improve treatment times for brain tumour patients such as Richard as we go further with our plan for change?
Mr. Speaker, can I send my best wishes, and I'm sure of the House, to Richard and to every family living with cancer for their courage and fortitude. Can I also pay tribute to my honourable friend for Mitcham and Morden, for her work to raise awareness of the devastating impact of brain cancer. I'm really proud that our plan for change has already delivered faster diagnosis for more than 80,000 cancer patients. We're rolling out Cancer 360, Mr. Speaker. That's groundbreaking new technology that will slash treatment delays across the NHS, investing in more scanners, surgical hubs and radiotherapy machines. It's important work that is only happening because of our decision to make a record investment in the NHS, opposed by every other party.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Ben.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I echo the Prime Minister's comments? It was an honour to meet veterans at the VE Day parade on Monday and to commemorate the sacrifice of that generation. I look forward to marking VE Day at Westminster Abbey tomorrow. Does the Prime Minister now admit that he was wrong to remove the winter fuel payment from millions of pensioners?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the number one job of this government was to put our finances back in order after the last government lost control. That is, and to deal with the 22 billion black hole that they left. Because of our action, we've stabilised the economy, we've invested record amounts in the NHS, with a payment out for the 3 million lowest paid, and of course we're committed to the triple lock, which improved pensions by £470 last year. And Mr. Speaker, because of the work that we've done, we're a country that countries like India want to do deals with because of the messages and the work that we've done.
Mr. Speaker, the only black hole is the one the Prime Minister is digging. This issue affects some of the poorest and most vulnerable pensioners. His mayor in Doncaster says it's wrong. His First Minister in Wales says it's wrong. Even his own MPs are saying it's wrong. He's refused to listen to me on this. Will he at least listen to his own party and change course?
Mr. Speaker, let's spell this out. All the parties opposite would take this country back to where it was a few years ago. Broken public finances, interest rates through the roof, NHS waiting lists at all-time high. Because no other party in this House is prepared to say how they would put the finances straight. No other party is saying how they would invest in our NHS and public services. No other party is focused on the long-term prosperity of Britain. No one on this side, Mr. Speaker, is denying how big the challenges that we face, but no one on that side of the House is even prepared to take those challenges on.
Mr. Speaker, we wouldn't balance it on the backs of pensioners. Pensioners are poorer and colder because of his decisions. All the while, energy has got more expensive for everyone. Why has the Prime Minister broken his promise to cut energy bills by £300?
Mr. Speaker, the way to bring energy bills down for good is to deliver cheap, clean, homegrown energy. And in the meantime, we've extended the Warm Homes discount to 6 million households, 1 in 5 families. That's £150 off the bills next winter. But what won't bring energy bills down is the Leader of the Opposition's policy, leaving us hooked on fossil fuels at the mercy of dictators like Putin. I'll tell you what else won't bring bills down. It's them blocking every infrastructure that's needed in their own backyards. They balance the books, they crash the economy on the backs of millions of working people in this country. That's why they delivered the verdict they did at the last general election.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister talks about clean energy. We have the second highest amount of renewables on the grid in Europe, and yet we still have the highest energy bills. This is not about clean energy. The Prime Minister has broken another promise. He won't admit it, but isn't the truth that he can't cut energy bills because of his net zero policy?
Energy bills on fossil fuel have fluctuated massively in the last 3 years because we're exposed to the international market. The only way to get bills down is to go to renewable energy. It's something she used to believe in, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've got the Shadow Chancellor here, his previous words. Net zero, the shift must happen now as a matter of urgency. His words, it's no longer an environmental issue. Energy independence should be reviewed as part of our national security. He must have our lines, I think, Mr. Speaker. But what about the Leader of the Opposition herself? This is what she said. We believe that green trade and investment will be the future-proofing force that will help us create better tomorrow. And then she went on to say this, Mr. Speaker. It's long-term investment in nuclear and renewables that will reduce our dependencies on fossil fuels and keep down consumer costs. Now, she's got a reputation, apparently, for straight talking. She was right then, wasn't she?
Mr. Speaker, this approach to net zero is irrational. It's doomed to fail. Those aren't my words, they're Tony Blair's. He wants to throw words back, he should speak to him. But the truth is, the Prime Minister is on another planet. His net zero plans mean ever more expensive energy. Across the country, jobs are disappearing. Last week, a ceramics factory in Stoke closed because of energy costs. This morning, 250 more job losses have been announced in the North Sea. And yet, the amount of gas the UK is importing is doubling. So why is he shutting down the North Sea rather than getting our oil and gas out of the ground and making energy cheaper?
Mr. Speaker, as I've said many times, oil and gas will be part of the mix for many decades to come. But net zero, Mr. Speaker, is an opportunity to be seized. We've had over £43 billion invested since July of last year in clean energy. That's good for the economy, good for business, good for jobs, apprentices and growth. Mr. Speaker, the global race is on for the jobs of the future, and I believe Britain can win that race. The Leader of the Opposition, I don't think, is yet a climate denier, but she's a climate defeatist. She doesn't believe in Britain's ability to win the race for our economy, businesses and jobs. And they've never backed Britain. There's nothing patriotic about that.
Mr. Speaker, he's got no answer, but he couldn't even bring himself to say something. He couldn't even bring himself to say something to the 250 people who found out that they lost their job this morning. The fact is, pensioners are poorer and people are being laid off. From winter fuel to net zero, his energy policy is a disaster and everyone knows it. We know it, the public know it, the unions know it, his MPs know it, even Tony Blair knows it. His only answer is to go further and faster in the wrong direction. Why should we all suffer because he won't admit he has got this wrong?
Mr. Speaker, of course nobody wants to see job losses, but she should address her comments to the tens of thousands of men and women in this country working on renewables for the future of our country and tell them that she doesn't want that. That is anti-growth, anti-jobs and anti-working people. But every week, Mr. Speaker, she comes along to talk the country down, to cart from the sidelines. She can't even bring herself to celebrate the deal we've done with India. They took 8 years fiddling around and got absolutely nothing. We've delivered the best deal since we left the EU, the most ambitious deal for India, which has been measured in billions of pounds into our economy and thousands of jobs in the country. She should be welcoming that.
Weston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. UK automotive faces major challenges, and Trump's tariffs are the latest crisis to hit the industry. Investment and jobs are now on the line, from Mini to McLaren, Aston Martin, Jaguar Land Rover, and many others. Will the Prime Minister continue to make their case in his talks with the US regime and remain a champion for this vital sector, unlike the Honourable Member for Clacton, who believes that Jaguar deserves to go bust?
Mr. Speaker, he makes a very good point. We are backing British car companies like JLR, and our India trade deal will see tariffs slashed for car sales, and that is good for British jobs. And the criticism on the double taxation is incoherent nonsense. It's a benefit to working people. It's in the agreements that we've already got with 50 other countries. And if the member for Clacton or the Leader of the Opposition is seriously suggesting that they're going to tear up agreements with 50 other countries, create a massive hole in our economy, they should get up and they should say so.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we celebrate 80 years since Britain led our allies to victory over fascism, can I, on behalf of the Liberal Democrats, pay tribute to all those who struggled and sacrificed so much for our freedoms today? And can I associate myself with the Prime Minister's remarks about the conflict in Kashmir, and with him urge restraint and de-escalation on both sides? Mr. Speaker, among the messages voters sent ministers last week, one stood out: bring back the winter fuel payment for millions of struggling pensioners. So people will be disappointed the Prime Minister failed to do that today. Mr. Speaker, he says he wants to go further and faster to clean up the mess left by the Conservatives. But on social care, so crucial for our NHS, he's going slower and slower. Not only will the Casey Commission take 3 years, we learnt on Friday the government plans to take an extra 7 years to implement it, not till 2036. So will the Prime Minister rip up that timetable, make sure he doesn't repeat the mess made by the Conservatives, and get on with fixing social care this year?
Mr. Speaker, as he knows, we're taking this in 2 stages. We are already taking measures to increase the support for social care, quite right too, and doing the long work to reform and make sure we put a system in place. But can I just say to him once again, he comes here every week saying we should spend more money, and he comes here at the same time saying he doesn't want to pay for any of the measures to raise that money. That is nonsense.
Sir Ed Davey.
Mr. Speaker, I'm disappointed with that answer, and I will keep coming back to hold the Prime Minister to account. Mr. Speaker, people also want a government that will stand up for our country against Donald Trump. Mr. Speaker, first he came for our steelworkers and our car makers with his outrageous tariffs. Now Donald Trump is coming for our world-leading British film industry. So will the Prime Minister work with our allies in Europe and in the Commonwealth and make clear to President Trump that if he picks a fight with James Bond, Bridget Jones and Paddington Bear, he will lose?
Mr. Speaker, he really should listen to the sectors that he thinks he's championing. They do not want us to abandon the work we're doing to try and get an agreement with America. They want that agreement to reduce tariffs. That's the sensible, pragmatic way to protect our national interest. It is not sensible or pragmatic to choose between the US and the EU, to abandon the work we're doing on trade with the US and leave the tariffs exactly where they are. That's the most damaging thing that could possibly be done.
Jack Abbott.
Refer to the House as my register of interest. Mr. Speaker, for young people in Ipswich, there is no shortage of ambition, just a need for greater opportunities. And that's why last autumn I was proud to sign an agreement with Sizewell C guaranteeing 500 jobs for people in my town, alongside additional investment for Suffolk New College's courses on welding, engineering and fabrication, so kids in my town can access the well-paid, secure skills jobs on offer. So therefore, can I urge the Prime Minister to support a final investment decision for Sizewell C, not just for our country's energy security, but also for the once-in-a-generation opportunities for young people in Ipswich and Suffolk?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's good to see a local Labour MP fighting for jobs in his constituency and achieving excellent results. Mr. Speaker, we will make our final investment decision at the spending review, something the party opposite failed to deliver in 14 years. We're unashamedly pro-nuclear, pro-growth and pro-jobs. That's why we're making it easier to build small modular reactors and scrapping absurd rules that left vital projects tangled up in needless paperwork. We're doing the work that they failed to do in 14 years.
Stephen Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prior to the election, the Prime Minister promised that energy bills would come down. They continue to rise. He promised that he would save the refinery at Grangemouth. It's shut. And of course, he promised that he would unleash a generation of secure energy jobs in my city of Aberdeen. Well, today, Harbour Energy, the largest independent player in the North Sea, have announced that they are about to shed their workforce by 25%. That's 250 jobs in my constituency gone in the blink of his eye. And do you know who they blame, Mr Speaker? They blame the policies of the Labour Party. So can I ask the Prime Minister, in fact, can I invite the Prime Minister to come to Aberdeen and explain to my constituents why he is willing to move heaven and earth to save jobs in Scunthorpe while destroying jobs in Scotland?
Mr Speaker, nobody wants to see job losses, but I'd remind the right honourable member that before we came into office 10 months ago, the SNP government in Holyrood, alongside the Conservative government, did absolutely nothing for projects like Granmouth. Absolutely nothing. In Grangemouth, we have committed £200 million to secure the future for the site, delivered a £100 million deal. We're helping with the training guarantees that are needed. But just like his First Minister, the Honourable he'll raise anything to distract from their disastrous record. Almost 1 in 6 Scots stuck on an NHS waiting list, standards and violence in Scottish schools, over £1 billion cut from local government. We gave them the biggest settlement since devolution. They've been in power for nearly 2 decades. They've got absolutely nowhere to hide their appalling record.
We should struggle.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I thank the Prime Minister for recently visiting the now royal port of Barrow in my constituency to lay the keel for the new Dreadnought-class submarines recently. He will have seen how proud we are to build our nuclear deterrent, which keeps us safe. As we move forward with our plans for change, does the Prime Minister agree with me that Barrow and Furness can provide a blueprint for the whole country with defence investment, creating jobs, growth and prosperity in communities right across the UK?
She's absolutely right, Mr Speaker. Royal Barrow is a model for how defence can be a catalyst for the skilled, well-paid jobs right across the United Kingdom. And I was proud and humbled to thank the crew of the Vanguard submarine returning home after months away, including 4 of those on board who are returning to their newborn children. That's the change that will come from spending 2.5% of GDP on defence for the first time since the last Labour government. Extra investment in Barrow has been made possible by my honourable friend and this government because the party opposite made promises, but as usual, they never ever set the money aside.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Ahead of the 80th anniversary of VE Day, may I thank the Prime Minister for his government's recognition of the highly dangerous and clandestine work of the 1,746 pilots and navigators who form the RAF's photographic reconnaissance squadrons and the 635 Buckinghamshire-based photographic interpreters, often forgotten, by marking their service with a national memorial near the Churchill War Rooms. They had a near-death rate of 50% and only 2.5 months life expectancy. But they still captured 26 million images of enemy operations, providing daily up-to-date intelligence via the interpreter's analysis to the strategists in the Cabinet War Rooms for all our armed forces. I'd ask the Prime Minister to join me when this national memorial is unveiled to pay our respects to the likes of the late Captain Wilfred Bruce Tilley, DFC, of Axbridge in my constituency, and the other amazing young men whose work was so critical to the safety of millions of people in this country and elsewhere.
Well, can I thank her for raising this really important issue? And I'm sure members across the House would support a memorial to the service and sacrifice of those veterans. The bravery and service of individuals like Captain Tilley and others in the photographic reconnaissance units and photographic interpreters saved the lives of many servicemen and servicewomen and, of course, civilians at the cost, as she rightly points out, of many casualties, in fact, of those units. So as we mark the 80th anniversary of VE Day, we will remember them who helped secure our greatest victory.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, the London Borough of Hackney spends £54 million a year and rising on temporary accommodation. Not only is this costing the taxpayer dear, but it's wrenching families apart, communities rent asunder, schools are closing, and families are living in hostels in overcrowded rooms or far-flung out of London. I welcome our pledge to build 1.5 million new homes. Will the Prime Minister reassure my constituents that social housing is a priority for him?
Well, she's absolutely right, Families are desperate for security of their own home, and we are delivering the biggest boost to affordable and social housing in a generation, backed by an additional £2 billion of investment. And that and our reforms will supply our ambitions to build 88,000 new homes across London, including in her constituency. Mr. Speaker, at the same time, we're tackling the root causes of homelessness and, of course, scrapping Section 21 evictions.
Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under the Conservatives, inequality has surged, with now over 14 million people, including 2,000 children in the South Cotswolds, now living in poverty, while the richest 1% see their incomes soar. Of the developed countries, we are now the 9th most unequal. Will the Prime Minister listen to the Liberal Democrats, the public and many of his own Labour backbenchers and commit to reversing changes such as PIP, the winter fuel allowance and two-child benefit cap, and introduce clear poverty reduction targets to ensure that any economic growth benefits those who need it most?
Well, she's right to raise the appalling record of the last government, which saw 900,000 more children in poverty. Mr. Speaker, we're already delivering 750 free breakfast clubs, boosting the minimum wage for over 3 million. That's the lowest paid workers in our country. And the Child Poverty Task Force is looking at every lever that can be pulled. I'm very proud of the last Labour government's record on tackling poverty, and will continue to do that in this government.
Len Stewart.
Mr. Speaker, last month's data showed the NHS lists in Wales fell by 3 months in a row. In England, the waiting lists have fallen by 6 months in a row. In Scotland, after nearly 20 years in charge, the SNP government have left our NHS on its knees. Instead, remarkable acts of charity from rock legend Rod Stewart are helping people to get the care they need. Will the Prime Minister agree with me that Scotland needs a new direction so that my constituents in Ayr, Carrick and Cumnock don't rely on charity for their health care?
Well, I thank her for raising this issue. The contrast, as she points out, is stark. In England and Wales, waiting lists are falling, with over 3 million extra appointments already delivered. In Scotland, the SNP they've just introduced, Mr. Speaker, their 5th NHS recovery plan in just 4 years. They've had the biggest budget settlement since devolution. Nearly 2 decades in power, they've still no idea how to fix the NHS, and they've run out of excuses.
Sean Burry.
Mr. Speaker, VE Day marked the end of horror in Europe, and afterwards our post-war expansion of welfare benefits was something truly principled from Labour. So, given the real fear felt by disabled people in Brighton Pavilion and across the nation, will the Prime Minister agree that now is the time to be principled again and restore their support, not make his MPs vote to restrict it?
Well, I thank her for raising the record of the post-war Labour government, a great reforming government. Mr. Speaker, the principles remain the same, which is those that need support and protection should have that support and protection. Those that can be supported and helped into work should be helped and supported into work, something that isn't happening under the system as it is, and those who can work should work.
Colin Days.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Crewe in my constituency has a proud rail heritage, with Crewe Station boasting unrivalled 360-degree connectivity to all 4 corners of our country. So when the Conservative government took the decision to cancel the second leg of HS2, this was a great betrayal of my constituents, taking a sledgehammer to our town's prospects for regeneration and prosperity. So will the Prime Minister look kindly upon proposals to extend high-speed rail north of Birmingham, utilising Crewe's unique strategic value to the rail network and bringing opportunity and prosperity to the north of England?
Well, Mr. Speaker, he's right to highlight the importance of stronger and more reliable rail connections, improving journeys and driving economic growth. The party opposite utterly failed to grip delivery on HS2. Costs went through the roof, timelines were shredded, false promises and a total failure. Mr. Speaker, we're reviewing the position that we inherited, and we're committed to improving rail connectivity across the north, and we've already announced £415 million extra for the key Trans-Pennine route upgrade, which will slash journey times, deliver growth and more reliable modern services for passengers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week, the Israeli government approved a plan to officially conquer Gaza. And just yesterday, Minister Smotrich vowed that Gaza will be entirely destroyed and that the Palestinians will have to leave in great numbers to third countries. This comes at the end of the extermination of over 50,000 Palestinian men, women and children, and something at the same time simultaneous expansion of illegal settlements in the West Bank, something I witnessed with my own eyes last week. So will now the Prime Minister finally acknowledge that ethnic cleansing is underway and to end all UK military cooperation with Israel, especially the illegal provision of F-35 fighter jet parts, or will he risk make Britain complicit in war crimes and be the Prime Minister to see Britain answer at The Hague for its role in this atrocity?
Well, Mr. Speaker, most of what he says is simply not right. But can I address? I do want to address the position in Gaza and the West Bank, because it is increasingly intolerable, and I am deeply concerned, particularly with the lack of aid that is getting in and the impact it's having on tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of individuals. That concern is something I recently reaffirmed to the Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority, where I asserted again that a two-state solution is the only viable approach for peace. And our focus is on delivering peace for Palestinians and Israelis, returning to the ceasefire, getting the hostages out and humanitarian aid in that is desperately needed in greater number and more quickly.
Maureen Barr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a result of a relationship breakdown, my constituent Martin and his 3 children ended up homeless. They have gone from living in a hotel to temporary accommodation. Martin feels abandoned because Glasgow City Council haven't been in contact for months. Months of uncertainty has disrupted all their lives, but Martin is especially worried about the impact on his children's education. Like any father, he wants stability for his family, but the lack of social housing means they are stuck in complete limbo. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that every child, no matter where they live, deserves a safe home and access to a good education, and that in every part of the UK we need to build more social housing to end homelessness?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm deeply sorry to hear about Martin's case and absolutely agree with her comments about every family deserving a safe and a secure home. And in England, that's why we're investing an additional £2 billion to help deliver the biggest increase in social and affordable house building in a generation. But in Scotland, it is frankly disgraceful that over 10,000 children have no fixed home to call their own after nearly 20 years of an SNP government. Mr. Speaker, that's the highest level ever and shows why Scotland desperately needs a new direction.
That because...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, I was talking to Jason, a pub landlord, and he told me he's heard a rumour about the Prime Minister. Not that one, not that one. He's heard that there is a reason why the Prime Minister hates Britain's pubs. Landlords like Jason are being battered by Labour's jobs tax and the slashing of small business rates relief, meaning that as many as half of Britain's pubs could be closed by 2030. Why does he hate Britain's pubs? And if he doesn't, why is he taxing them into extinction?
Mr. Speaker, nobody likes pubs better than me, and we support them. But, Mr. Speaker, it's the same old nonsense. They say they don't want the national insurance rise, but they don't have the courage to say they'd reverse it, because they know if they said that, they wouldn't be able to say where the money's coming from. That's how we got into the problem in the first place.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Few things are more harrowing than a parent's desperate and repeated attempts to access the mental health support their child needs. Organisations like Smile, a counselling service supporting young people in the Bathgate and Linlithgow constituency, are stepping into the breach whilst young people languish on waiting lists without the help they need. Over the last decade, Smile has been a lifeline for thousands. Will the Prime Minister join me in wishing Declan and the team at Smile a very happy 10th birthday and thank them for their invaluable work in supporting our young people and families?
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I join her and commend all the staff at Smile for their vital work. Far too many young people are left without the support that they need. And that's why we're recruiting an additional 8,500 mental health workers, providing access to specialist mental health professionals in every school, and funding talking therapies across the country to bring down waiting times and get people the care that they need.
Alfred Blandry.
With the so-called EU-UK Reset Summit less than 2 weeks away, will the Prime Minister reassure the House that he will not hand over any British sovereign powers, particularly hard-won controls over our UK fishing waters, in backroom deals with Brussels?
Mr. Speaker, as she knows, we committed to resetting the relationship with the EU. We think there's a better deal that can be had. I'm not going to provide a running commentary. What I can say is this. We will act only, as we always do, in the national interest. We've secured a very good deal with India. We're talking to the US, and we're going for a reset with the EU to boost our economy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you know, I'm alarmed by news that the Press Association, which assiduously covers our exchanges here, may cut back its dawn-to-dusk coverage through redundancies. Now, Hansard faithfully records our words, but it's reporters in the press gallery which bear witness to the human drama here. And no amount of AI will replace the human eyes in the press gallery. Will the Prime Minister join me and my honourable friend from Rochdale in calling on the newspapers and media outlets which fund the Press Association to hold the front page and reconsider these rash moves?
Well, Mr. Speaker, he raised a really important point. We enjoy free press and independent journalism in this country. Across the world, journalists risk their lives and lose their lives doing what they do best, independently pursuing the truth. And I've been on many occasions to award ceremonies, usually on a yearly basis, where the names of those journalists that have either lost their lives or their freedom is read out. And it's always a humbling reminder of the really important work that they do.
Final question, Mike Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, as you know, Parliament has banned charging of electric vehicles in its underground car park because of safety concerns. And yet, local authorities around the country often feel powerless to stop the construction of battery energy storage systems near people's homes, near our rivers and canals, despite 3 fires already this year. Will the Prime Minister look again at his planning and infrastructure bill to make it easier, rather than harder, for local communities to have a meaningful say?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm really proud that on our planning and infrastructure we're taking the action that hasn't been taken for years to drive our economy. And I'll remind him it was the thing that was signalled by the OBR as the single biggest driver of growth over the coming years.
That completes Prime Minister's questions. Let the front bench change over. Right, we now come to the urgent question. Stuart Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To ask the Minister if he will make a statement on the potential implications for the UK film industry of the United States' proposed 100% tariff on foreign-produced films.
Minister Black.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the House will be aware, President Trump announced on Sunday that he had authorised the Commerce Department to initiate tariffs on all movies produced in foreign lands. He has made other comments since. This is a very fluid situation, and we will continue to take a calm and steady approach. I spent most of Monday talking to UK and US filmmakers and the General Secretary of BECTU, amongst others, and I can tell the House that we are already in active discussions with the top of the US administration on this subject. We are working hard to establish what might be proposed, if anything, and to make sure our world-beating creative industries are protected. We're absolutely committed to ensuring the film industry can continue to thrive and create good jobs right across the UK. UK film and high-end television generated production spend of £5.6 billion in 2024, and we want to work with our domestic industry and international partners to continue to build on that success. We are absolutely clear that the deep ties between the US and UK film industries provide mutual benefits to both countries. Productions are, by their very nature, international partnerships, which are often developed and created across different countries and locations. Indeed, US movies are often multinational precisely because US movies earn far more overseas than they do domestically in the United States of America. The UK and the US both benefit when the likes of Star Wars and Mission Impossible are filmed in the UK, just as we both benefit from the close working relationship between our producers, talent and crew. Our countries have a long history of working together to drive the growth and creative success of our film and television sectors. From Cary Grant to Hugh Grant and Alfred Hitchcock to Christopher Nolan, British talent has often been at the forefront of the US sector, and I'm absolutely sure this will continue in the years ahead. I was once told by a film producer, never judge a film by the first 10 minutes. I think we can say the same of this.
Secretary of State Stuart Tundra.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer. And as he rightly says, we learned over the weekend that the President administration intends to impose this 100% tariff on all films produced outside the US. It is understood that he's directed US government to begin implementing this policy immediately. Now, I welcome the fact the Minister absolutely recognised the film industry in this country is a jewel in our crown and world-leading creative industries, and I would also point out that, of course, the sector alone is worth £1.96 billion here and supports 195,000 jobs up and down the country. And, of course, it shows off our great British culture and values and the talent that we have, and also some of the most amazing settings for so many films of different genres. And I'm glad that they are working to ensure that all is done to give confidence to our directors, actors, screenwriters, producers, that they are thinking about starting the negotiations with President Trump's team for 5 months after the election, and fired Britain's top trade negotiator. And it is difficult not to wonder if a different approach could have led to a different outcome. Nonetheless, the priority is to protect our film industry. So what assessment has he made of the potential impact on the UK film sector? What immediate steps is the government taking to engage with the US and ensure that that investment in UK facilities is highlighted comes from many US businesses who would be affected? And what contingency plans has he prepared in the event that no exemptions can be secured? And finally, what assessment have they made on the potential drastic cut in the BBC studio's profits, which sales into the US market could have on the licence fee?
Well, first of all, can I, on a cooperative note, say that one of the reasons that we have a very strong film and high-end television sector in the UK is because of the joint policy that has been adopted across several years by both Conservative and Labour administrations, which is to make sure that we have very competitive tax credits, and I pay tribute to the work that was done by the previous government, and that we were able to enhance when we brought in the 2 new tax credits in the budget just before Christmas. Yes, we're not in favour of bringing in tariffs. In fact, I think I'm right in saying that in 1947 the Labour government did bring in tariffs on US films. because we thought that there were too many US films being shown in British cinemas. It didn't go very well as a strategy because the Americans simply banned export of US films, and we ended up watching Ben-Hur repeatedly in every cinema, and a film called Hell's a Poppin', which I don't think anybody has since watched ever since. However, the successful bit of what we did in 1947 and 1948 was that we invested in the British film production system. And that led to films like Hamlet and Kind Hearts and Coronets. So I think that that's the pattern that we still want to adopt. But let me be absolutely clear. We believe that there are mutual benefits to both of us if we continue on the path that we have selected. I'm not sure precisely what is intended. I don't know what a tariff on a service would look like. I don't know whether it's intended that that will be on movie theatres. The danger for that is already in the US they have two major problems with the US film industry. One of them is distribution costs, and that could deal if they went down that route, it could lead to heavy problems for them. And the other problem is the very high costs of making movies in the United States of America. But as I say, most films these days are an international collaboration of some kind, and we want to maintain that. Even Paddington, I'm looking at the honourable gentleman from Cheltenham over there, only because I suspect he's about to mention it, and he's just given me a Paddington stare. Even Paddington, of course, has not just, which was a British production, but it was made by Studio Canal, which of course is part of Canal Plus, and it had Spanish actors as well as British actors. I mean, this is just a fact of modern films. They are multinational, and that is one of their strengths. Incidentally, I don't think Paddington ever went to Peru. I don't think they filmed any of it in Peru. And I'm told by my Peruvian friends that there aren't any bears in Peru.
Dave Bagpillier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I welcome the Minister's measured and thoughtful response to this latest announcement by President Trump and his full-throated support for the British film industry. He'll be aware that in my constituency in Hackney, Hackney South and Shoreditch and across Hackney, we're very much a venue for filming, both for film and television. In his discussions with the United States, will he make sure that he's also championing, as I think he just briefly referred to, high-end television that is produced and often filmed and made in Hackney, and also a plea for all of those creative industries in my constituency that feed into the film industry? Can he ensure that there's good communication from the government about these negotiations, because this is creating a great deal of uncertainty?
Minister.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend, and and I know Hackney very well. As she knows, I used to be a councillor in Hackney, and it's not just London, it's the whole of the United Kingdom, which is a phenomenal place to make a movie, because we have some of the best scenery, some of the best buildings. It's not just Bath that gets used endlessly for lots of films, but when I was there a couple of weeks ago, I think people were listing a long list of films. But she's also right that what is the difference between making Bridgerton or making a movie? Some of these things, the pattern is very similar. International collaboration is important because it delivers international audiences, and we want to maintain that.
Max Wilkinson, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. British film really is the marmalade sandwich in the lunchbox of our creative industries. It gave us Bond, Paddington, Harry Potter and Monty Python. Now, Donald Trump clearly thinks he's a godlike figure, but on the Lib Dem benches, we're very clear he's not the Messiah, he's a very naughty boy. If he had his way, we'd be watching Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Alcatraz, or perhaps the Executive Order of the Phoenix. So, can the Minister confirm that all options will be on the table to protect our film industry, including working with allies like Canada and Australia, who have shown strength in recent weeks by voting anti-Trump? Will he commit to immediately meeting with film industry leaders in the UK to coordinate a response in this area? And will the government back our world-leading creatives by doing the right thing on AI and copyright?
Well, I could have predicted half the question because I knew Paddington would get in there. But on the serious point, first of all, I am meeting with the industry tomorrow afternoon, and I look forward to understanding from them what precise concerns they may have, as well as the obvious concerns that all of us share. I want to just slightly caution against this word, which has been used, I think, 3 times now, that President Trump announced something. A clear policy has not been announced. And I think we need to be just careful about that, because it's difficult to see, as I said earlier, how you would impose a tariff on a service or on films in this way. I want to be just careful and precise about the way we move forward on this. I've been asked, what are we doing? We've already had people in Washington, D.C. Talking with people in the Trump administration at the highest level, and we will progress that. Of course, we want to do everything we possibly can to preserve the strength of the industry.
Joe Boris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of my little sisters works in the UK film and TV industry, and I'd like to say I'm immensely proud of her. Can I just urge the Minister to, as part of the soon-to-be-published Creative Industries Sector Plan, to look at how we bolster homemade film and TV, particularly in Northumberland, where we've got some of the most wonderful landscapes. Obviously, we sadly lost Sycamore Gap a couple of years ago. I know that provides a memorable backdrop. But we have Hadrian's Wall, we have a fantastic workforce, and too often I see young people in the North East have to leave the North East to get those creative opportunities elsewhere in the UK.
It's an extremely well-made point, and I would add to it something that I said when I appeared before the Select Committee, from whom we might hear in a moment or two, I guess, which is that I'm very keen on having a mixed economy in the British film industry. Sometimes we will be making films for other markets. Sometimes we'll be making films which are predominantly British stories, telling about the way we are in this country, selling them obviously around the world, but where the IP remains with British production companies. And it's that mix that I think that we need to achieve. I should say also, Mr. Speaker, just in response to the Honourable Gentleman, he talked about our relationship with the US. Actually, the Secretary of State last week was in India, and I want to make, and she wants to make sure that we have a much stronger relationship with India as well, one of the fastest growing economies in the world. We think we can do a great deal more in that film production space as well.
Chair of the Select Committee, Dame Caroline.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. There's no doubt that this speculation is going to cause huge worry to those working in British film production. But as he says, it also highlights once again the importance of bolstering British screen sector. And we did recommend steps to deliver this in a very recent Select Committee report. Yet within days of publishing that report, his department had already asked for an extension with which to respond. And then this weekend, we heard rumours that the whole department is up for the chop under his government. And I'm not sure whether that's before or after he's sacrificed our creative industries on the altar of AI. So what I want to know from the Minister is, he's a brilliant communicator, and I know deep in his heart he cares passionately about this, but when is he going to show some grip and actually show some action on behalf of our world-leading creative industries, and in particular our screen sector?
Well, I hope she would accept that there are areas where I have taken very deliberate action on the back of recommendations from her Select Committee, not least in relation to a levy on gig and arena tickets to fund support for small music venues. But I take her point. I wasn't aware that we'd asked for an extension. We will get on with providing a response to her as fast as possible. It was an excellent report. I've read it. There are lots of good things in there that I do want to take forward. We probably won't be able to do everything in it. But look, I think one of the things that is really important that we focus on is skills in the UK screen industry. This has been raised repeatedly with me. I want every kid in the country to have a chance to work in the creative industries, and including in film and high-end television. Many of them wouldn't even think that that was a possibility for them. So we need to transform that whole pathway into those skills in the industry, and I know that's one of the things that our Select Committee has raised.
Peter Swallow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whether it's because of the fantastic state-of-the-art Shinfield Studios just up the road, or access to fantastic filming locations like Swinley Forest and the Crown Estate, or because of our incredible transport links, Bracknell Forest is increasingly becoming a go-to location for the film industry. But just as the Minister's already touched on, we do need to see more emphasis placed on homegrown skills, so young people in Bracknell can access the fantastic opportunities the film sector offers. So could he say a bit more about what this government is going to do to break down the barriers of opportunity into the film industry?
Minister.
Well, we have invested significant amounts of money already in the skills sector, and more came as a result of the budget this year. He's quite right that his patch is a go-to area for film production. But one of the reasons that US companies, and for that matter companies from many parts around the world, come to the UK to make films is because of the skills that we have in the UK. We have some of the best cinematographers, some of the best technical experts, the designers, as well as the acting talent, which means that it's possible to make a very convincing film in the UK more effectively and cheaper than in many other places. We're determined to make sure that the UK remains the best place in the world to make movies.
Daisy Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Film studios are a really important part of our economy in Hertfordshire. And they give opportunities in terms of jobs, apprenticeships and work experience to people in my constituency of St Albans. Now, as the Minister has recognised, it's not remotely clear yet how these tariffs would actually operate, and many have said that they are unworkable. But if America does go ahead and we have to take action in this country to make sure our film industry is competitive, can I urge him to please look at the business rates regime with the Treasury? Nearby to me, Sky Studios in Elstree have seen their business rates go up by over 600%. They now account for 30% of their operating costs. So can I encourage the Minister to look at that as one measure that we can tackle to make sure that we protect our creative industries and film sector here in the UK?
She makes a very good point, which has been raised with me by several others. Of course, we did make special provision in the budget, which to ensure that there's the business rates for studios are protected until 2034. I think that is a good measure. I know that some of the very large ones are finding it more difficult. I'm happy to continue looking at that. But let me just read a statistic that may be helpful. According to the Motion Picture Association of the United States of America, their report published in January this year says that in 2023, the US earned $22.6 billion in film and television exports, and its services trade surplus was $15.3 billion, or 6% of the total US trade surplus in services. I think it is mutually beneficial for the US and the UK to remain with the system that we have without tariffs.
Chris Vance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you'll be aware, Harlow is the birthplace of Rupert Grint, Joe Joyner, Rick Mail, and I have to mention Layla Khan because I used to teach her and she's an up-and-coming star. It's also recently doubled for Paris in an episode of The Crown. Does the Minister agree with me that Harlow, as well as the rest of the UK, has a huge amount of talent, and far from relying on US importing of films, we actually produce some fantastic films in this country, and our film industry is growing, and what can this government do to support it to continue to grow and thrive?
Minister.
Well, in particular, he's quite right about Harlow, and I would argue many different parts of the UK that have never yet managed to get into films need to up their game. Local authorities can play a role, I think, in making sure that their area is considered as a potential place to make a film. Often it's about whether there's other facilities available in the local area that can contribute to that. But he makes a fair point on behalf of Harlow. I think that if there is a film, he'll be starring in it.
Oliver Dowden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I may be able to help the Minister. Paddington Bear actually lives in Boreham Wood because Paddington Bear, the movie, was produced at Elstree Film Studios in my constituency, which sits alongside Sky at Elstree as jewels in the crown of the British industry. And it's no surprise that Donald Trump is jealous because, by many accounts, more film and television content is produced in Hertfordshire than in Hollywood. Yep. But as the Minister rightly says, this is of mutual benefit between our two nations. But there is one thing that the Minister could do right now, and for once I will say that I agree with my honourable friend, the honourable lady, the Minister for, the Member of Parliament for St Albans. I'll get my facts right in a moment. And this is the key point. Business rates are proving crippling for many of our studios, including Elstree Film Studios. So I would urge the Minister to have another go at the Treasury. I remember this with the Culture Recovery Fund. They're resistant to begin with, but if you keep on going, you get some further movement. That would be a huge fillip to the industry and help it withstand whatever shocks it may face.
Minister.
Very confused about who's a minister and who's not a minister these days. Look, I accept the point. It's clearly an issue. And in fact, I remember when we were in opposition, I was regularly knocking on the door of the shadow Secretary of State, trying to get him to do something to persuade the Treasury to do something about business rates at the time. Look, I'm fully on board. I understand the problem that we have, and I look forward to him assisting me in more endeavours in the future. Hugh Bonneville told me me that he was slightly upset when he signed up to Paddington in Peru because he thought he was going to be filming in Peru. But he said, I got as far as Boreham Wood.
Lisbeth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The economy is set to benefit from £50 billion boost from the Universal Theme Park in Bedfordshire, which is going to, as all members will welcome, star Paddington Bear. Would the Minister agree that stars like Paddington Bear actually have an enormous amount of soft power? I think we've heard that today in the Chamber. So what can he do to reassure me that he is going to make sure that we protect and support the very next generation of great British storytellers?
Minister.
She makes a very good point about, and we're delighted, incidentally, that the theme park is going to happen. I think that will be absolutely transformational for the British tourism industry. Apart from anything else, it'll be the largest theme park across the whole of Europe. I'm very grateful to my colleagues in the Treasury who certainly delivered when it was necessary in relation to that. I do want to emphasise how important are not just film but high-end television, and for that matter the very existence of the BBC and stuff that's produced by ITV and many others is as part of our soft power, though I think Paddington probably counts as hard power.
Clive Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Shinfield Studio in Wokingham Borough has brought hundreds of jobs to my constituents and many across Berkshire. It's a very important part of our local economy and a symbol of the UK's creative strength. We must not forget Berkshire is the Hollywood of Britain, and it must be protected from Donald Trump's reckless tariffs. Will the Minister condemn these harmful tariffs and work with the film industry to ensure that the UK remains the world's premier destination for film investment?
He's absolutely right. We want to maintain it as the premier destination for international investment, not just from the United States of America. I've already referred to India, but I would also argue Nigeria. I'd like to see a lot more co-production between the UK and Nigeria. It's worth bearing in mind, incidentally, that 51% of our movie exports go to the European Union. So, I mean, this is a genuinely open market, and my belief is that free trade is better than tariffs.
Andrew Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister will know that the UK has a world-leading film and TV workforce that flies the flag for collaboration, British talent, and for economic growth around the world. But he will also know that much of our film workforce is freelance, and he will be watching this news with anxiety, particularly as many of them are still recovering from the impact of the industrial action taken in the US recently. So can I thank him for his hard work, and I'm pleased he's spoken to Philippa Childs, the head of BEC2. BEC2 are fearless champions for our industry in the UK. Can I ask him, can he join me in reassuring BEC2 members and our film workforce that we are on their side and we will help protect film talent in the UK, whatever happens?
Mr. Speaker, I'll make 2 points following on from that. First is the point about how the difficulties that there have been in the UK market in film and high-end television industry in the last couple of years because of what happened in the United States of America makes that point about the mutuality between the US and the UK film industry all the stronger. The truth is, I would like the US movie industry to be strong, because if it's strong, our industry will be strong as well. I think there are net benefits to both of us, and there's a win-win here. The second point is about freelance. Yes, I've often worried that so much of the creative industries rely on freelance workers. Now, in many cases, that's great. People want that kind of career, but they also need some degree of security if they're to be able to, take out a mortgage and plan their economic future. So that's one of the things that we're definitely looking at in relation to the industrial strategy, which we hope we'll be publishing soon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The film industry is enormously important to the Buckinghamshire economy, with Pinewood Studios in my honourable friend for Beaconsfield constituency, but that's supporting many of my constituents in jobs, not just at the studios themselves, but the many supply chain businesses that feed into that. And Pinewood go over and above most other businesses I know in providing opportunities to young people through their Futures Festival of really showcasing every single career that could be had in the film industry. Much of that success is actually done on American money, because with companies like Disney and Amazon using Pinewood out of choice, that is where the success comes from. So on top of what the Minister has said about working with the Trump administration to try and avoid these tariffs, can he assure us that he's also working with companies like Disney, like Amazon, to ensure that those American brands are speaking up to say why they are choosing Pinewood and other UK studios?
Minister.
Actually, I think the first text message I received very early on Monday morning was from Pinewood. Yes, I'm on that case as well. And he makes it. It's not just incidentally about Amazon and Disney. It's also about the streamers and a whole series of different other organisations who like making their product here in the United Kingdom. And of course, Pinewood is the home of Bond. I mean, that too now makes the point, because historically, I think I'm right in saying that the distribution rights for Bond were with an American company, but the production rights were with Barbara Broccoli and her relatives. But now all of that is with the US. So let me put it this way. I'm very hopeful that Bond will still always be British.
John Sleeper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm glad that the Minister mentioned the phrase win-win, because in international trade, in the film industry, in the creative industries, it has to be about win-win rather than zero-sum. And I would like to point out that when I've discussed this industry with Fabian Riggle, the founder of Secret Cinema, it's absolutely clear we have such incredible innovators in our creative industry and in the film sector specifically. And in order for them to flourish, we need to retain that sense that it's a win-win internationally and for the UK, not zero-sum.
He makes an extremely good point, Mr. Speaker. And if I might just leap off the word cinema that he used there, to make the point that actually film is not just about production, it's also about finding audiences. And one of my concerns in the UK is about how do we make sure that cinemas, they would be called movie theatres in the United States of America, I guess, can flourish as well. They can be a really important part of dignity in a town, in a town. A town that's got a cinema is likely to be a place that has respect for itself, and I'd like to make sure that that continues into the future.
Pete Wishart.
It's now one of the most sought-after film destinations in the world, and US film companies now regularly base their operations within Scotland. And we've featured in everything from Batman to Indiana Jones to World War Z. And all of this will be put at risk with any concept of tariffs at all, as well as a developing film sector in Scotland. Will he therefore work closely with the Scottish Government in any response to the US? And will he state quite clearly that this would be mutually self-destructive and that all parties are set to lose if they do proceed with anything approaching tariffs?
Well, I've already made the point that we think there's a win-win, that we, into the future, if you have strong US movie industry, that will benefit a strong UK movie industry. I believe in fair trade and free trade. In fact, over recent years, it's been worrying, I think, that more and more countries have wanted to put up protectionism around a whole series of industries. It hasn't tended to happen in services. It's tended to be more about goods, which is one of the other issues in here. He's absolutely right about Scotland. I'm very keen on working with all the devolved administrations to make sure that we remain the best place to make films and high-end television. It's worth saying, incidentally, I don't know whether anybody's watched Havoc, but that was all filmed in Wales. Sorry, I wasn't referring to the Conservative Party, no. You misheard, did you? Yes. But Havoc was all filmed in Wales, but looks as if it's an American dystopian city.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. Warner Brothers Studios Leavesden is in my constituency of South West Hertfordshire and is actually a genuine world-class film and TV production centre, providing thousands of jobs, generating significant wealth for the UK economy and earning their reputation as Hollywood in Hertfordshire. Major international blockbusters including Barbie, Mission Impossible, Paddington and the Harry Potter franchise have been filmed there. And the recently confirmed HBO Harry Potter TV series is set to be filmed there this summer. Leaving aside the decisions of the Chancellor has made and the existing impact they have had on the economy, can the Minister provide reassurance that he will continue to update the House and the industry more widely about the mitigations that this government is going to potentially do if these tariffs do come to fruition? Thank you.
Minister.
Well, we're working on making sure that we have a proper trade deal that would not just mitigate, but mean that we didn't end up in the situation that he's just described. I know Leavesden well, and for that matter, Warners were in touch very quick. I think I was in touch with them very quickly on Monday morning as well. I'm very hopeful that they'll be part of our discussions when I gather the industry tomorrow afternoon. But he makes a very good point.
Well done.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So unlike many others in the House, Totnes does not have film studios, and South Devon doesn't have, there's never been a major movie made there. But we do have a lot of creatives living in our community, from writers to musicians to producers, and a costume maker who happens to be my daughter, who I'm very proud of and who is entering this industry, an industry that we should all be proud of. Now, these proposed tariffs will deal another blow to the UK film industry if they materialise, following on from the strikes we've already seen. So can I ask the Minister for his assurance that he's ready to work to protect and insulate the UK film industry and all the jobs it sustains, particularly freelance jobs, by pushing for either tax credits or business rate adjustments to support the industry here? Thank you.
Minister.
I find it difficult to believe that there hasn't been a single film ever made in Devon. But if there hasn't, I mean, one of my major aims must be to make sure that in the next few years there is a film made in Devon, and maybe we'll be able to get her a bit part. If I might just refer back to Cheltenham, one of the films that was made in Cheltenham many years ago was the film If, which is a wonderful film, Lindsay Anderson. But all I would say is the word if is a very important one at the moment, if these tariffs were to be imposed.
Dr. Andrew Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Sunday, the President of the United States said, uppercase, "We want movies made in America again!" exclam. Would the Minister agree with me that the key to making great movies is to ensure artistic freedom and expression and to grow the necessary skills? And with that in mind, would you visit Tech Trowbridge in my constituency, which is doing a good job in upskilling young people in multimedia?
Minister.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a one-time producer of a British-made film myself, I'm proud that North Norfolk has been the backdrop for many great films, including, of course, Alan Partridge, Alpha Papa. It's no wonder that President Trump would want to dissuade such a film from coming to America. As Steve Coogan himself has said, the only person on earth who's more Alan Partridge than Alan Partridge is Donald Trump. Can the Minister assure the blossoming creative sector in North Norfolk that he values their contributions to our economy, and reassure them and me that the government will do everything it can to protect them from another Trump trade tantrum?
Well, he refers to some of the things I've already spoken about, but I want to ask him why he didn't make his film in Devon, because he's obviously not got the message from his own party colleagues. Look, I mean, there are lots of great British films that will be watched in American movie cinemas over the weeks to come, and I'm absolutely certain that no president is going to want to say, don't watch British films. One of the films that I've enjoyed most over the last few months is Conclave, a phenomenal success and remarkably timely.
Sammy Wilson.
Mr. Speaker, the film industry is, of course, important in Northern Ireland because the executive has poured a considerable amount of money into NI Screen, and we have had the very internationally successful Game of Thrones filmed in Northern Ireland, and much of that was filmed in my own constituency, and you can see the benefits. I mean, tens of millions of pounds have been poured in terms of building sets, costume, catering, and even now we still have thousands of tourists every year coming to see where the films went, so there's a long legacy from it. So I welcome the way in which the Minister is dealing with this. It is speculation at the moment, but before it becomes policy, it's important that we get the message over to the administration. And would he ensure that in constructing those arguments, he has consultations with the Northern Ireland Executive to ensure that Northern Ireland's voice is heard in these discussions?
Yes, he makes a good point. I already have had some discussions on other matters relating to the creative industries with members of the Executive in Northern Ireland, and I think I've got another call next week. Of course, I'll make sure. He makes a very good point about tourism. An awful lot of tourism, of tourists who come to the UK want to see the places where some of their favourite movies and television series were made, and that's one of the things that Visit Britain is capitalising on at the moment with its Starring Great Britain campaign.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I very much enjoy discussing the British film industry because members across the House stands up and say that they've got the Hollywood of Hertfordshire and the Bedfordshire and everywhere else. And I'm blessed in Spelthorne because, of course, I've got Europe's biggest film studios, the second biggest in the world in Shepperton, second, interestingly, not to Hollywood, but to China. And there is a certain amount of nervousness in Spelthorne as a result of the posting on Truth Social that the Minister has come here to talk about. I agree with him that it's incredibly difficult logistically and technically to unpick the US-UK IP in a film. I think that will prove incredibly difficult. And I therefore commend him for his very sort of considered run at this, and I think it's the right thing to do. I visited Cineco, one of our many British film support companies. They make sets and props. I visited them a couple of weeks ago, and one of the points that they made on the skills is that the apprenticeship sort of model doesn't really work terribly well for industries which have so many freelancers and such lumpy work schedules. So, as a sidebar to his meeting with the industry leaders tomorrow, would he please raise it and discuss it with industry leaders?
Another Lawrence Arabia question.
Well, interestingly, I was at the Bad Wolf Studios in Cardiff last week, and this is one of the things that Jane Tranter was raising with me, and how important it has been for them that they've been able to take on apprentices working in the company because they have a security of knowing a number of projects. They've got their own studios, and it's not, they've not just been making Doctor Who, they've been making His Dark Materials, and Industry is being filmed there at the moment, a whole series of different projects. That enables them to be able to take people on not just on a daily basis. But one of the things that we need to change is the apprenticeship levy in the UK so that it works better for the film industry, so that they're able to make those long-term commitments to people's future careers.
Joey Frank.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the Minister's comments this afternoon. As a member of the Cultural, Media and Sports Select Committee, we have heard over and over again how important the UK tax film credits are for the industry and the tangible difference it is making to filmmakers across the UK. Can the Minister advise what is the government considering increasing or adjusting them in any way to maintain competitiveness with US states and other international markets, given the context that we are now working within?
Minister.
Well, I've always said that I support these. We first introduced them under a Labour government under Gordon Brown, and then they were continued by the Conservative government, and then we introduced two new ones. I think, incidentally, that the independent £15 million movie tax credit will make a significant difference to the UK, in particular at this point. But I note that some of the documents that have been around in relation to the semi-announcement in the United States of America have praised the way we have done things in the UK and want to mirror it in other parts of the world. So I'll take praise wherever I can get it.
Mr. Speaker, I think it still is around the uncertainty of President Trump's comments and the unsettledness that puts in the industry, and especially in Northern Ireland, where we have, the Titanic film studios, Northern Ireland Screen working away. It's already working on A Night of Seven Kingdoms, which is the prequel to the Game of Thrones. So there's a lot of industry, a lot of activity already going. In this meeting tomorrow, could the Minister consider actually including Northern Ireland Screen as well as industry in that, rather than leaving them another week for that engagement?
Very fair point. I'm very happy to do that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm deeply proud that St Margaret's in my constituency has been home to Twickenham Film Studios for over 100 years, which has been involved in both production and post-production work for big-name films including The Italian Job, Gandhi, and most recently the Oscar-winning sound production for Top Gun Maverick. But they have been beset by financial challenges, from the US writers' strike to the issues raised by my honourable friend, the member for St Albans, of skyrocketing business rates. So can I, and these potential tariffs could really deal the fatal blow to studios such as Twickenham. So could I urge the Minister, as others have, to work with the Treasury and the Valuation Office on bringing down the rateable value for these film studios? But also, could I invite him to follow in the footsteps of Tom Cruise and come to St Margaret's and visit Twickenham Film Studios?
Minister. The thing is, he does all his own stunts, doesn't he? And I'm a little bit nervous about, I don't know, being dangled off the back of a helicopter or dumped in a vat of, I don't know, anyway, whatever. The Shadow Minister says he'll happily arrange. Well, if he'll happily arrange that, I'll invite him to come and see the Rhondda Tunnel, and we can dangle him down a hole as well. Anyway, the point, she's making the point that has been made several times. Tom Cruise is one of the biggest investors in the UK because of all the movies that have been made here, and we're very grateful to him. And the BFI is going to be honouring him next week. I think that is a really good thing. As I say, we are the best place in the world to make movies, and we want to continue that. I'm feeling very left out in not having a studio in my own constituency. But we have produced some of the best actors in the world, including Sir Stanley Baker, who I think one of his great films, you'll know this, Mr. Speaker, was Sodom and Gomorrah.
I was thinking more of a different film.
What film were you... Anyway, we're not meant to do this, are we, Mr. Speaker? Order. And I'm very proud of a young actor at the moment, Callum Scott Howells, who's doing phenomenally well.
Final episode, Jim Shillman.
Never the final episode, still a wee bit to go yet. Can I thank the Minister very much for his answers and for the energy that he displays on behalf of the sector. Following on from the question to the Business and Trade Minister yesterday about the film industry in Northern Ireland, I had highlighted the £330 million income since 2018. The importance of USA films within this cannot be overstated, with epics such as Blade Runner, say nothing of Game of Thrones and Star Wars, so many using our highly skilled studios and work due to the cost effectiveness of this option. These Trump tariffs, of course, will negate much of the benefit. And what discussions can be had? I'm quite confident of the Minister's response on this, but what discussions can be had to emphasise the need for consideration for our sector, an integral part of this United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland? Thank you.
Minister.
Well, I thought the credits were already rolling, and then he comes up. But look, I feel... It may be just that I'm a very optimistic person by nature, but I feel very optimistic about where all of these negotiations will end up. I'm very hopeful that we will end up with some kind of deal. I also passionately believe that wherever that deal ends up, the UK film industry will succeed because we have always been a great nation at telling stories that people want to watch all around the world. We've got some of the greatest actors. We may be a small nation, but we managed to dominate on screens all around the world because we're talented. We're just talented. And that's talent. Everybody will still want to keep on buying whatever the deal may be.
Right. We'll let the front bench change over. We now come to the oral statement. Minister Faulkner.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll make a statement on India and Pakistan. The whole House will have been closely following developments in recent weeks, following the horrific terrorist attack in Pahalgam on the 22nd of April that left 26 tourists dead. Last night, soon after 2100 British Standard Time, Indian forces launched missile strikes against 9 sites in Pakistan and Pakistani-administered Kashmir. The Government of India has described their actions as measured, non-escalatory, proportionate and responsible, and deliberately targeted at terrorist infrastructure. Following India's actions last night, a military spokesperson for Pakistan has stated that 26 Pakistanis have died and 46 were injured, including civilians and children. At a meeting of their National Security Council earlier today, the Pakistani government has stated that it reserves the right to respond in a manner of its choosing. This is an incredibly delicate moment, Mr. Speaker, in an evolving and fast-moving situation. As my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, noted just now, rising tensions between India and Pakistan are a serious concern. The government has been monitoring the situation closely and staying in close contact with all of the key partners. Since the developments overnight, my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, has been in contact with both the Indian External Affairs Minister, Jaishankar, and the Pakistani Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, Dar. Our High Commissioners in Delhi and Islamabad have also been in close contact with their hosts, and I met this morning with the Pakistani Finance Minister, Aurangzeb. The Foreign Secretary has also been coordinating closely with other partners, notably the United States and the Gulf. Our consistent message to both India and Pakistan has been to show restraint. They need to engage in dialogue to find a swift diplomatic path forward. The UK has a close and unique relationship with both countries. It is heartbreaking to see civilian lives being lost. If this escalates further, nobody wins. We clearly condemned the horrific terrorist attack last month, the worst such attack in Indian-administered Kashmir for many years. Now we need all sides to focus urgently on the steps needed to restore regional stability and ensure the protection of civilians. The UK will continue to work closely with our international partners in pursuit of short-term de-escalation and longer-term stability. The Foreign Secretary will have a chance to discuss the situation with EU foreign ministers in Warsaw today. He and the whole government will stay in close touch with the governments of India and Pakistan, as well as with those with influence in the region. Mr. Speaker, de-escalation is of the utmost importance, not least given the large numbers of British nationals in the region. The safety of British nationals will always be our priority. Overnight, we have issued factual updates to our travel advice for both India and Pakistan, updating British nationals on military activity and potential disruption to flights in the region. British nationals in both India and Pakistan should stay up to date with our travel advice and follow the advice of the local authorities. I'm acutely aware, Mr. Speaker, that for many communities across the UK, and indeed members across this House, this is a very personal and sensitive situation. The British Pakistani and British Indian communities make a huge contribution to this country. We recognise this will be a difficult time for many. We look to all community and faith leaders to spread a message that now is a time for coming together across religious and ethnic differences. Mr. Speaker, we now need to see calm heads. Britain will continue to play our full part for de-escalation and diplomacy, and I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Foreign Secretary Dave Patel.
Speaker, on the 22nd of April, terrorists brutally killed 26 tourists in Flagnum in a barbaric and savage act of violence. Most victims were killed at point-blank range by gunshots to their heads. My thoughts and prayers were with all those that are affected by this murderous, violent terrorism in Flagnum. This was an act of terrorism, and we must reflect on the fact that Flagnum has joined Mumbai, New Delhi and other places in India that will be forever scarred by an act of terror. Mr. Speaker, this is clearly a precarious moment, and we want to see tensions ease between India and Pakistan. We want to avoid a state-on-state military escalation. We're also clear that India has the right to take reasonable and proportionate steps to defend itself and to dismantle the vile terrorist infrastructure that has caused death and continues to threaten them. And we know that terrorists based in Pakistan threaten India and Western interests. It was the country that Osama bin Laden was hiding in. And because of the long history of violence inflicted by terrorists on India, the UK has in place long-standing security cooperation agreements with India. And in fact, last week in this House, I reminded the government of those long-standing security agreements, why they exist and why they should matter to us here in the UK. Given these links, the UK government should be at the forefront of working with our friends and allies to tackle the terrorist threats that we face collectively. While I know the Minister will not be able to speak about intelligence sharing between UK and India, can he at least confirm whether our intelligence and security services have been in contact with India about the incidents that took place and are supporting their investigations? Has the government provided any specific security assistance to India in the aftermath of the terrorist attack in Kashmir? Could Britain offer specific support that might help avert escalation? Does the Minister agree with the assessment made by India that the Resistance Front, who claim responsibility for the 22nd April attacks, are a front for Pakistan-based terrorist group Lashkar-e-Taiba? Lashkar-e-Taiba are a proscribed terrorist group who have a clear history of committing acts of terror against India and have reported links to Hamas, including reports that Hamas representatives have met with them earlier this year. Can the Minister confirm if the UK government is aware of any cooperation and links between Lashkar-e-Taiba and Hamas? I asked this of the Minister last week and he did not respond, so I'd welcome an answer on this important point today. And does the Minister know which terror groups are currently operating in Pakistan and their links to other terrorist groups that threaten our interests? Last week, the Minister said we are playing our role by trying to ensure that tensions do not escalate. The British government does have a role to play and needs to leverage its influence to help ease tensions. So can the Minister inform the House what are the direct discussions that are taking place between India and Pakistan governments since those attacks 2 weeks ago? Was the UK informed in advance of the actions being undertaken, and does the Minister have a plan to support easing these tensions? The Minister is referring to the Foreign Secretary's calls with counterparts and engagement. Can he give more evidence of those discussions? Have ministers undertaken an assessment of the terrorist infrastructure based in Pakistan? Has the Minister had discussions with the Pakistan government on this matter? And can ministers give assurances that there are sufficient measures in place to ensure that no British aid to Pakistan, either bilaterally or through multilateral sources, has ended up in the wrong hands? With these questions in mind, the diaspora communities here in the UK have strong links to both India and Pakistan, as the Minister has said. So can he give an update on the actions that will be taken to prevent the escalation of tensions impacting on communities in our country? Can he give details of extra consular capacity and support the UK will be given to the High Commissions in both countries and provide consular support to British nationals in Pakistan and India? And finally, will the Minister now be more forthcoming with the House about the government's assessment as to who carried out the terror attack in Kashmir, whether they were working with any other malign actors, and whether he is working through the security implications for the UK?
Mr. Speaker, the Right Honourable Lady asks important questions. And let me take this opportunity to reiterate our condemnation of terrorism in all its forms. Our thoughts are, of course, still with those affected by the despicable acts of the 22nd of April. Our thoughts are with their loved ones and the people of India. The Prime Minister spoke with Prime Minister Modi on the 24th of April, and the Foreign Secretary spoke with his counterpart on the 27th. We are all, as the Right Honourable Lady would expect, in regular contact with our counterparts. As she may know, the Foreign Secretary is travelling at the moment, and I'm not privy to the very latest contacts he has had, but I know that they are ongoing. The Right Honourable Lady asks important questions about community relations in this country. I'm, of course, working closely with my MHCLG counterparts who are talking to affected communities across the country, recognising the sensitivities that she points to. And I can confirm to the Right Honourable Lady that I have had extended discussions with my Pakistani counterparts about the terrorist threat within Pakistan and the efforts that need to be taken in order to address it, and that is a terrorist threat which affects Pakistan herself as well, who has, of course, suffered, even in recent months, very significant terrorist attacks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the reality is that India's airstrikes in Pakistan and Azad Kashmir have seen the killing and injury of dozens of civilians, including children. And it has led to a massive escalation in the real threat of war between two nuclear powers. This follows 2 weeks of bulldozer tactics and thousands of mass arrests in Kashmir, the unilateral withdrawal from the Indus Treaty effectively threatening collective punishment on millions of Pakistanis, and now this act of aggression, all in complete contradiction of international law. The Minister is right to say that the international community must now focus towards de-escalation and stability. But this cannot be achieved in full without addressing the central issue of Kashmir. An issue close to the hearts of many honourable members in this case, an issue that I have. The plight of the Kashmiris has been raised by me over the last decade in this chamber. So does the Minister accept that the UK has a moral, historical and legal duty and responsibility to end this 80-year period where UN resolutions on Kashmir have frankly sat gathering dust? And will he act so that the sons and daughters of Kashmir have their birthright to self-determination, something promised to them decades ago?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I thank my honourable friend for the question. Of course, there are, and it's well known to this House, a range of wider issues between India and Pakistan, and Kashmir is one of them. But on this most delicate of days, it is important that the House remains focused on the importance of de-escalation, and that is my key message from this dispatch box today.
Spokesperson Callum Millen.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and to the Minister for advance sight of his statement. The terrible terrorist attack last month brought death to 26 civilians and rightly shocked and appalled many. Yesterday's military strikes by India and the subsequent exchange of artillery fire in Kashmir mark a deeply concerning escalation. The prospect of New Delhi and Islamabad engaging in further tit-for-tat military action risks destabilising the entire region and leading to more civilian deaths. Their status as nuclear powers also generates severe global risks. It is vital, therefore, that both governments work to de-escalate the current crisis. Maintaining open lines of communication is key to preventing escalation and enabling a diplomatic off-ramp for both governments. So can the Minister provide more detail on the conversations that he said have taken place overnight with government representatives in New Delhi and in Islamabad, and on what steps the government is taking to help maintain an open dialogue between both governments? Can the Minister also confirm whether additional resources are being provided to support British nationals in Pakistan and India to ensure their safety? Given our shared history, Madam Deputy Speaker, and now as Commonwealth partner to India and Pakistan, the UK has a particular responsibility to support efforts at mediation and to help prevent retaliatory actions which could contribute to more deaths on both sides. Can the Minister describe what plans the government has to engage international partners at the UN to support mediation efforts? Yesterday's strikes follow a series of escalatory measures taken by India and Pakistan over the past week. In addition to the cessation of military activity, it's vital that these countermeasures are wound back. Can the Minister confirm what, as part of mediation efforts, the government is doing to press India to reinstate the Indus Water Treaty and Pakistan to reopen its airspace? Indian and Pakistani communities across the UK will be very worried by these new developments, and it is vital that they are fully supported. So in addition to the remarks he's already made, can the Minister provide more detail on what steps the government is taking across all departments to support communities here in the UK?
Minister Falconer.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his questions. Let me try and take them in turn. I can confirm that the Foreign Office is taking action to ensure that the best possible consular service is available to British nationals in India and Pakistan. He mentions airspace. Even over the course of the last 24 hours, there have been a number of changes in relation to airspace. So I would encourage both members of this House and anybody watching at home to please keep Foreign Office travel advice as the central place for advice. This is a fast-moving situation, and options for air travel may change, and indeed have changed over the last 24 hours. So please do keep updated on that, and I can confirm that my department is taking steps to try and ensure that our call centres are open and that those who are concerned should get in direct touch. We are, as I said earlier, in direct touch with both governments. I was, as I said, with the Pakistani Finance Minister shortly before coming to this House. I won't comment in great detail about the substance of those discussions, other than to say that my key message in those engagements was the same message I just repeated to my colleague, which is Now is a time for de-escalation.
Tahir Ali.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. India's record on Kashmir is not something to be proud of. It has been ethnic cleansing Kashmiris for over 78 years. Modi's record on human rights is not forgotten. An individual who once was barred from coming to this country. Kashmir has a history that spans over 4,000 years. It has never been part of India and will never be part of India. That can remain a distant dream of Modi. Does the Minister agree with me that now's the time to de-escalate, but also make sure that the promises of a plebiscite for the Kashmiri people are also delivered, so this issue can be resolved for once and all?
Mr Faulkner.
My honourable friend is right to focus on de-escalation. That is my focus this afternoon from the dispatch box. Our position on Kashmir remains unchanged, but it will be the focus must be, for now, ensuring that there is no further threats to regional stability.
Andrew Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister has rightly underlined the fact that we are facing an incredibly dangerous moment at this point, but that Britain has a uniquely deep, historic and influential relationship with both these great countries, which we must now deploy with great energy and skill. Does he agree that the government of Pakistan must take more action against these terrorist organisations which operate from their soil, and also understand the outrage that Indian people, but not only Indian people, but including the diaspora in Royal Sutton Coldfield, feel that these dreadful events have taken place, as we have heard today?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I thank the Right Honourable Gentleman for his question, and I recognise his long attention to these issues. As Secretary of State for DFID, he sent a young DFID official to Pakistan in 2010, and I remember his commitment then. He's right that Pakistan has been plagued by a terrorist threat within its own borders. It's a plague which has been of concern to its neighbours, but also most acutely to many Pakistanis, as we've seen devastatingly in recent months. They must do more to seek to tackle that threat, and I've discussed that with Pakistani ministers through the course of my ministerial duties. India is, of course, right to feel outrage at its attack, at this terrible attack of the 22nd of April. There are now civilian casualties on both sides, and it is vital that we focus on de-escalation and trying to restore calm and regional stability.
Valerie Vaz.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for coming to the House so soon? Could he confirm when he last met, or his department last met, with the ambassadors of both India and Pakistan, and will he ensure that the dialogue will continue with them?
Minister.
I can confirm to my honourable friend that the dialogue will continue. Of course, the Prime Minister was in touch with Prime Minister Modi just yesterday, and I was with the Pakistani Finance Minister and indeed the Pakistani High Commissioner in London just an hour or two ago.
Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Following the terrible terrorist atrocities on the 22nd of April, as the Minister has outlined, clearly India took diplomatic action and further actions to penalise Pakistan. Pakistan then retaliated. But it was made clear at the time by India that either Pakistan removes the terrorist bases along the line of control, or India would remove them. And last night, 9 sites were hit. These were terrorist bases where training took place, where terrorists are being trained to go and commit further atrocities in India. So will he now call on Pakistan to make sure those terrorist bases are removed once and for all?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the situation remains incredibly delicate and fast-moving, and we have seen rival accounts through the course of the morning about events. We will, of course, track these events very carefully, and I responded to the Right Honourable Member for Sutton Coldfield earlier on the question of the terrorist groups in Pakistan which pose a threat to Pakistan as well as others. We will, of course, continue to monitor events very closely. There's still much that is disputed, but it is absolutely obvious for regional stability to be restored, we need to have direct, urgent contact between India and Pakistan and calm heads prevailing.
Members need to temper the language and not to use statements such as misleading the House. Nasha.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. 26 people have lost their lives in the Balam attack, the terrorist attack, and now 26 people lost their lives in yesterday's attack. The truth remains that there is no evidence presented to anybody to say, any partners, national, international partners, to say that Pakistan was indeed responsible for the attack in Balam. That is not being presented. Does the Minister agree with me, and I thank the Minister for coming so soon to the House and all his efforts in trying to de-escalate, but to actually get de-escalation, then, and if India is so certain, then does he agree with me that India should be sharing that evidence with the world to justify this barbaric attack on killing 26 people and attacking mosques in the middle of the night?
Minister Faulkner.
Madam Deputy Speaker, as I said in the previous answer, there is clearly considerable amount of debate about the facts of what has happened just in the last few hours. I do not wish to focus, and it would indeed be inappropriate for the UK to speculate on those exact facts. We need to focus from this House on de-escalating the risks to regional stability that we see today.
Ayub Khan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. There's enormous distrust between both nations, which stems from the dispute of Kashmir. Immediately after those terrorist events in India last month, India was quick off the mark to blame Pakistan. And Pakistan, in response, made it plain that they had nothing to do with it. Pakistan's position is, how can terrorists travel 230 kilometers in a devastating terrain, by foot, armed, assassinate people, and in return, by foot, into Pakistan, in an area which is the most militarized zone on this planet? So it is somewhat incredulous that a blame was put on Pakistan almost virtually within an hour of this atrocity. Will the Minister commit to leveraging our diplomatic influence to encourage an environment conducive to open dialogue? And would he agree with me that there is an ever-growing imperative to normalise relations and address underlying issues from territorial disputes to acts of violence through peaceful negotiations and mutual understanding?
The honourable member is right to finish his remarks focusing on the importance of direct dialogue, which of course I support, and I won't seek to adjudicate from this dispatch box on the competing claims about the facts.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. After the recent terrorist attack, and as tensions on the subcontinent sadly escalate and videos of the destruction circulate, many of my Slough constituents of Indian and Pakistani heritage are extremely worried about the safety of their loved ones as bullets fly, as bombs drop, especially those of Punjabi and Kashmiri heritage, because they have and already have and will be impacted most by the death and injuries to their family and loved ones. So while sending condolences to all affected and recognising the UK's historic ties and responsibilities, can the Minister assure Parliament that our government will be at the forefront of efforts to de-escalate tensions between the two nuclear-armed nations, and that we will ensure that negotiations are enabled to chart a path to peace and prosperity?
Minister.
I can assure my honourable friend that we are very much involved in the efforts to try and encourage de-escalation. And for those with constituents who are either themselves or their family concerned by developments, I would encourage members across the House to point their constituents towards our travel advice, which we will keep updated as and when the situation requires.
French.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The barbaric terrorist attacks in Kashmir on innocent Indian and Nepali tourists caused deep distress in my Old Bexley and Sidcup constituents, which is home to many Indian nationals and also those of Nepali nationality. I welcome the Minister's tone today about de-escalation, and I think he's getting the tone just about right. But can I also urge him to ensure that none of this escalation of tensions in that part of the world happens here in the UK, and ensure that Hindu temples in particular are offered the same funding and security that is given to mosques around the country?
Minister.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his measured and reasonable question. I'll take away the issue that he raises. I've been in regular contact with the Minister for Faith and Communities in the Department for Local Government, and we're discussing these issues closely, recognising the sensitivity in constituencies like the honourable gentleman's and many others that have been mentioned this morning.
Stella Creasy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister will know that our British constituents with strong links to Kashmir are both horrified by the terrorist attack and also terrified by the escalation of violence that we've seen overnight, as well as the online hatred that is being fomented. 2 weeks ago, I asked the Minister about the possibility of missiles being used in escalation. We've now heard from the Indian Foreign Secretary that they believe that there are further terrorist act plans, and the Pakistani Prime Minister has called last night's events an act of war. He will be aware of the UN Security Council meeting planned for Monday. What words of comfort can he offer our constituents horrified about what will happen in the next couple of days? That this government will not just push for de-escalation, but a long-term solution that guarantees the peace and security of everybody in Kashmir.
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for the question and for conveying the concerns of her constituents so effectively. Regional stability is in the interests of both India and Pakistan, and indeed the UK, and it will be to those ends that our diplomacy will be focused. As my honourable friend acknowledges, my focus this afternoon is on de-escalation, but of course we're engaged with both governments on the full range of the interests engaged.
Stephen Gethin.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I thank the Minister for his statement. We also condemn the terror attacks, the abhorrent terror attacks, and abhor any loss of civilian life. We do have two nuclear-armed states, though, who are setting up with one another. Can the Minister assure me there's been a diminishing of the international rules-based system? In his approach to this, can he assure me that he will be stressing the importance of that rules-based system when it comes to mediating between these two parties?
Minister.
I can assure the honourable member that the UK remains committed in all of our interactions to emphasising the preeminent importance of international humanitarian law and a rules-based international order.
Paul Wall.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the murder of 26 civilians in Pahalgam was truly horrific, but India's airstrikes have resulted in the deaths of 26 civilians in Pakistan and Azad Kashmir. This cannot be a bizarre, macabre game of tit for tat, where the only people who suffer are civilians on both sides. Can the Minister reassure my Rochdale constituents, many of whom are concerned about family members, that the government is doing everything it can through its consular access and also at diplomatic level to de-escalate the situation, and also to make crystal clear to India that water cannot be used as a weapon of war against the wider people of Pakistan and Kashmir?
My honourable friend is right, of course. Civilians must be protected. For British nationals concerned by developments, I would encourage them to refer to our travel advice. As I said earlier, this is obviously a fast-moving situation, and we will not be in a position to always update our latest advice from this dispatch box, so please, constituents should look there first and foremost for advice from the British government about how to ensure their safety. My honourable friend refers to some of the wider issues that we discussed last week, including the Indus Water Treatment Treaty, which I understand is in abeyance rather than being repealed. Some of these longer-term issues will, of course, need to be discussed. The first priority must be de-escalation.
Simon Hall.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. What role does the Minister envisage the Commonwealth playing to act as an honest broker in discussions between both India and Pakistan? And can he also assure the House that, given the fact that the trade deal with India was signed just yesterday, that there will be a clear demarcation of government response, and that the government doesn't feel in any way fettered as a result of that trade deal in acting as an honest broker between the two countries. It's a very important matter, and I hope we can assure the House on it.
Minister.
Our priority is to ensure direct contact between India and Pakistan, and to ensure that those tensions are directly de-escalated. We're of course very proud that we are Commonwealth members with both India and Pakistan, and that Commonwealth membership obviously reflects a deep and unique history between the UK and India, and the UK and Pakistan. We of course we welcome the free trade agreement that was announced yesterday, and of course these are close, deep friendships between both countries involved. We will, in all of our efforts, seek to restore regional stability, and we will do that with both of our friends.
Just as well.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you for your advice on tempering our language in here, because words have consequences. And I thank the Minister for his statement and the Foreign Secretary for all the work that they're doing in the background. Yesterday in this House, we celebrated the end of World War II, and I commended the role of the British Indian troops, now known as India and Pakistan, who fought shoulder to shoulder, shoulder on the wheel, made sure that we won. Allied troops won. World War II was ended. And as someone with Indian heritage, born in India, whose parents were born in Pakistan, I know only too well neither nation will take a backward step. So what can the Minister do to assure me and my residents in Ilford South that we will do everything possible to bring both the superpowers to the negotiating table to restore peace to this volatile part of the world?
Faulkner.
I thank my honourable friend for the sensitive and personal tone that he brings to his remarks. I too have seen the Commonwealth war graves in Pakistan and India, which is a tribute to the service of many from the British Indian forces that fought in World War II. I can assure him and his constituents that we will do everything that we can to play our full diplomatic role.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Given the significant and frightening ramifications of further tensions and instability between these two nuclear-armed neighbours, I agree with the Minister that de-escalation and diplomacy are the absolute priority. Can I ask the Minister to tell the House whether he has sought assurances that UK-manufactured weapons and military equipment have not been used in attacks against civilians? And can I ask him now to explicitly rule out supplying any UK-made weaponry to either side in a bid to increase pressure on all parties to engage in much-needed dialogue? Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, we have some of the toughest arms export rules in the world, and they will be fully adhered to in this case. I don't intend to make further announcements from the dispatch box about that regime now, but I'm sure in due course I can return to the House to provide a follow-up update.
Mohammed Yassin.
Madam Deputy Speaker, 10 days ago, this House stood united in condemning the attacks on civilians on both sides of the conflict. Yet since then, the violence has tragically escalated, with more innocent lives lost overnight as a result of Indian attack on civilians in Pakistan and Azad Kashmir. While we all want to see an immediate de-escalation of military action to prevent further loss of lives, does the Minister agree that lasting peace in the region cannot be achieved until the core issue of Kashmir is resolved and the Kashmiri people's right to self-determination under the UN resolution is recognized and upheld?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I recognise my honourable friend's long advocacy on these questions today. We are calling for de-escalation, and our position on Kashmir remains unchanged. I'm sure I will return to this House to discuss longer-term issues between India and Pakistan in the fullness of time.
Mark Pritchard.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I welcome the Minister's statements. Of course, terrorism, wherever it occurs, should be condemned. But can I, on behalf of my constituents, many of whom of Pakistani heritage and Indian heritage, join the Minister in calling for a de-escalation and dialogue between India and Pakistan. And ahead of the meeting in New York next week, I just wonder, as a permanent member of the UN Security Council, what more the UK can do to ensure that the United States is fully engaged in that process as well.
Minister.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his tone and his question, and I can confirm that the Foreign Secretary and other members of the government are in direct touch both with other permanent members of the Security Council, including the United States.
Harpreet Powell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And of course, this is a delicate moment, and it's no one's interest to see further escalation. So, of course, I condemn the loss of civilian life, both with the terror attacks and the military strikes that are ongoing now. But can I join the Honourable Member in saying it's really important that we work with our international allies and partners to try and de-escalate the situation. And I was contacted by a constituent in the region who is concerned about him and his family. So can I ask what role the FCDO is playing with British nationals in the region as well? Thank you.
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend, who's a doughty champion for her constituents. We have been updating travel advice, and I can confirm that my department is taking steps in order to be able to respond as fully as possible to the concerns of our collective constituents who are in the region. I would say to her and all members of the House, Foreign Office travel advice will be the first and best place for constituents right across the country to be looking.
Iqbal Mohammed.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Minister for his statement, and I associate myself with all the members of the House in the condemnation of the terror attack in Pahalgam and my concern at the military escalation between nuclear-armed neighbours, which has already resulted in the killing of 26 innocent people. I have thousands of both Kashmiri and Indian constituents. I myself am of Indian heritage, and they are absolutely terrified with what they saw last night, and they've been glued to their screens, worrying about their loved ones. The Minister has already explained what the steps the UK is doing at diplomatic level to de-escalate, but can he provide reassurance to my constituents that whatever steps the UK will take, the diplomatic steps taken will be neutral, impartial, and not favour one country over the other, and will prioritise peace and stability in the region?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question, for his acknowledgement of the importance of de-escalation, and I confirm that we will be prioritising regional stability, the reasonable interests of both country and indeed the UK's interests in the region, which includes stability between the two great friends to this country.
Debbie Abrahams.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I absolutely wholeheartedly support the Minister in his course for de-escalation. And I would also like to reiterate my condolences to the families who've lost loved ones, both in the attack last month, but in overnight as well. I represent a constituency that is about 20% Pakistani Kashmiri heritage, but I feel for our common humanity, anyone, any religious origin, anybody who's lost a loved one on either side of the line of control, that we should extend our condolences to. But could the Minister confirm, in terms of the international allies that he has been working with around trying to de-escalate tensions, and also on the security issue, given that the UNMAGIP was established back in 1951 and has a huge, extensive intelligence in the region, is he able to say whether he's been in contact with them and what they've said?
Mr. Faulkner.
I can confirm, Madam Deputy Speaker, that as well as the direct contact with India and Pakistan and the variety of other nations that I've mentioned over the course of this afternoon, we will continue to be in wide touch, including with colleagues in the Gulf, and I'm due to speak shortly to my Saudi Arabian counterparts as well. As this House would expect, we will be in regular and intense dialogue with all of those with an interest in the region and sharing with them our calls for de-escalation.
Andrew Morrison.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Does the Minister agree with me that whether it's the Nile or the Indus or anywhere else, weaponising water is wrong, and that it particularly affects the world's poorest? And does he share my disappointment at the suspension of the 1960 Indus Water Treaty? And does he further share my concern that were India tempted to exploit that suspension, that China might decide to interfere with the headwaters of the Brahmaputra?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the Indus River system is of enormous importance both to India and Pakistan, and it is going to be vital that all partners, all actors and international partners work towards its long-term sustainability.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his statement on this deeply concerning matter. Given that he has already highlighted the friendship that this country enjoys with both Pakistan and India, can he provide reassurances that it is in that manner that ongoing conversations with both countries will be conducted? And can he also detail which conversations have already happened or are planned with our international allies to de-escalate the situation in this part of the region?
I can confirm to my honourable friend that it will be in that spirit that we conduct our diplomatic efforts. There are many in this House who have alluded to their own family connections, either to India or to Pakistan. As I alluded to earlier, I have lived in Pakistan. It was the first lengthy overseas posting I conducted, and I know that many people right across this House feel our friendship with both India and Pakistan very deeply, and it's in that spirit that we will conduct our work.
Foster.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My heart goes out to the 26 families of the tourists that were killed last month. But my heart also goes out to the 26 civilians and children that were killed in Pakistan last night. I urge the government to do all that it can to de-escalate the situation, and as such, when can the Minister confirm when our Prime Minister will speak to the Indian and Pakistani governments, in particular Prime Minister Modi?
Minister.
The Prime Minister spoke to Prime Minister Modi yesterday. That was before these events. We have been in touch overnight and throughout the day with the Indian government, and I have been in touch throughout the course of the day with the Pakistani government as well.
Surgeon Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Everyone in this House knows that India has suffered a number of terrorist attacks over the years, including one on the Indian Parliament. Just last month, 26 innocent lives were lost following a devastating act of terrorism in Pahalgam. While India has the right to defend itself and its people, does my honourable friend agree that war is not good for both sides and it is time for de-escalation and for Pakistan to work with India to eradicate terrorism from the region?
Minister.
I agree with my honourable friend. De-escalation is vital, and it's to that end that our efforts are dedicated.
Ben Lane.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I commend the Minister and indeed the Foreign Secretary for their efforts to maintain dialogue with both countries and in conjunction with international allies to de-escalate the situation. Given the urgency for de-escalation, is there any reason why this matter cannot be taken to the UN Security Council for a more urgent discussion than is currently planned?
Minister.
The agenda of the UN Security Council was agreed in New York, and when we're in a position to update the House on what that agenda looks like, then we will of course do so.
Yasmin Qureshi.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I refer the House to my registered members of interest as the chair of the All-Parties Parliamentary Group on Pakistan. Madam Deputy Speaker, in my constituency of Bolton South and Walkden, I have people from Indian heritage, Pakistani heritage, Kashmiri heritage, and they were all absolutely gutted when they heard about the incident that took place 2 weeks ago, and of course what happened last night as well. My condolences to all of those who've died and their families. But India's decision to launch strikes without providing clear evidence of Pakistan's involvement in recent attack is reckless and deeply irresponsible. Pakistan, despite being routinely blamed, has actually suffered more in terms of terrorism in the last 10-15 years than any country in the world. And even in March, there was a terror attack there. But Pakistan has responded very carefully to what's happened. What I would ask, can I ask the Minister that would he urge India to stop escalating tension and to press for credible evidence and dialogue instead of aggression?
Minister Faulkner.
Madam Deputy Speaker, our focus from the dispatch box is de-escalation and regional stability. My honourable friend, who's got a long commitment to these issues, is right to focus on the damage that the scourge of terrorism has caused Pakistanis as well as others, and that has been the subject of many discussions between me and my Pakistani equivalents. Pakistan herself would most benefit from the eradication of terrorism scourge within her borders.
Adnan Hussain.
Madam Deputy Speaker, every day we witness the collapse of international limits on force, diplomatic norms and humanitarian law. Institutions built by nations after 2 world wars to secure a more peaceful world. Now, with 2 nuclear powers clashing, an escalation that could easily trigger a 3rd world war, I ask the Minister to confirm the UK's unwavering and unconditional commitment to international law, to condemn the Indian state's offensive against its sovereign neighbour, which has claimed the lives of 26 civilians, including children. And finally, I understand members have across the House, but I wish to emphasise the paramount importance and urgency of settling the long-standing issue of Kashmir through multilateral means and under the mediation of international bodies like the UN, so that lasting peace can finally take root in the region.
Minister Faulkner.
Madam Deputy Speaker, as I'm sure will be clear to all members, I'm focused on de-escalation and regional stability, and of course the UK continues to stand by the importance of international humanitarian law and a rules-based international order. International humanitarian law governs the actions of all states towards necessity and proportionality, and we expect all of our friends, and indeed every nation-state, to abide by them.
Jacob Collier.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I represent a large Pakistani and Kashmiri community in Burton who are watching in horror and fear at the risk of further military escalation. Many have family and extended family in the region and are understandably anxious about their safety and well-being. So can I ask the Minister, what assurances can he offer my constituents that the UK is actively engaging with all international partners to support de-escalation, protect wider regional stability and protect civilian lives?
Minister.
I recognise the concerns that will be felt in my honourable friend's constituency, as they are felt in Lincoln and elsewhere, and I can assure him and the whole House that we will use our full diplomatic weight to try and ensure de-escalation in the region.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for his statement? On my heart, as in others, is the loss of innocent life, and condolences to go to all of those who grieve today. Just a very salient reminder, Madam Deputy Speaker, in I Baptist Church in Newtownards, a few weeks ago the pastor told us there were 67 wars in the world, so it totally is a world at war. With news reports this morning that up to 5 Indian Air Force planes may have been shot down, the escalation of this situation is clear and indeed incredibly worrying. Does the Minister believe that we can successfully intervene and negotiate peace? And what assessment has been carried out with regards to the nuclear capacity to ensure global security? Thank you.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the honourable gentleman asks important questions. The UK's goal is de-escalation, to try and ensure that we return to regional stability, and the other issues between India and Pakistan, which have been long discussed in this House, are important questions to which we can return. But today, the focus must be on de-escalation.
Final question, Matt Turn.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank my right honourable friend for his statement and the sympathy that he has shown to those affected in these tragic events. Residents in my constituency of Watford, which has a large Pakistani and Kashmiri community, are really looking for leadership from the government. They have family and friendship networks that are deeply affected in the areas attacked last night. Now, we all recognise how sensitive and delicate the situation is and the need for calm thinking and dialogue. I wonder, will he outline a little more the actions that the government is taking to help reduce tensions and de-escalate the risk in the situation?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for the question and the concern he shows for his constituents in Watford. As I've said, we're in regular touch with all those states with an interest, and indeed with the two parties themselves, and we will continue to be so.
That is the end of the statement, and I'll allow the front benches a few moments to swap over. Point of order, Louis French.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This morning we learned that Labour's choice of their football regulator, David Cogan, made personal donations to both the Prime Minister and also the Culture Secretary. Shame. We believe that the government's decision not to disclose this when Mr Cogan's appointment was announced constitutes a potential breach of the Governance Code on public appointments and represents a clear discourtesy to both this House and also the DCMS Select Committee. This appointment is clearly cronies over clubs, favours over fans and brings major risk to English football. Can you please advise me, Madam Deputy Speaker, on the best way to ensure that this House is able to scrutinise such appointments and ensure all rules were followed by the Government?
I am grateful to the honourable member for giving notice of his point of order. The Chair is not responsible for public appointments or for the pre-appointment hearing process, but he has put his point on the record and he might like to raise it with the honourable member for Gosport, who chairs the Culture, Media and Support Committee, who I see is in the chamber as well. OK, we will now continue with the point of order.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Financial Times reported this morning that the Paymaster General has confirmed the UK is looking to set up a youth mobility scheme with the EU. This is in direct contradiction to the answer that the Minister gave to me in response to a question I asked in this chamber just 13 days ago. He said on that occasion, a youth mobility scheme is not part of our plans. We've always said we will listen to sensible EU proposals, but we will not go back to freedom of movement. This is only the most recent example. He previously told me there would be no plans for a youth mobility scheme on the 5th of December, the 6th of February, the 6th of March in answer to oral questions, on the 21st of January in response to a written question, and on the 29th of January in a Westminster Hall debate. The FT article states that the Minister has confirmed publicly for the first time that Britain is looking at setting up a youth mobility scheme as part of a new strategic partnership with the EU. The Minister can be in no doubt of the keenness of members of this House to be kept up to date on the progress of this issue. So as such, I ask, why has this announcement been made to the media rather than to members directly? Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
The honourable member will be aware that that is not a matter for the Chair. We are not responsible for the statements that government ministers make, but she's put her point on the record, and no doubt the Treasury front benches are listening. We're passing on her concerns. Now we'll move on to the next order of business. Presentation of Bill, Secretary of State Shabana Mahmood.
Victims and Courts Bill.
Second reading what day?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Presentation of Bill, Chris Philp.
Immigration and Visas Bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday the 16th of May.
Friday the 16th of May. I now go on to the 10-minute rule motion, Assets of Community Value Support Facilities, and I turn to Emma Foodie.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to amend the Localism Act 2011 to provide for automatic designation of sports facilities as assets of community value and for connected purposes. Whether for fun, fitness or friendship, sport plays an important role for many of us. Indeed, if you visit many of the villages and towns across my Cramlington and Killingworth constituency, or indeed towns and villages across the country, and ask a local what they're most proud of in their area, many will point to a local sports team. Whether that's the football team we played for, that we coached, or a family member competed with, or that we follow on journeys from heartbreak to victory. For other parts of the country, it's the same set of extreme emotions, but for local rugby league, rugby union, or cricket clubs, people will move to the other side of the world and will still ferociously support their home team. It's part of our shared identity. Our local sporting facilities, football pitches, swimming pools, leisure centres, are vital for well-being. Whether that's the swimming baths where you teach your kids to swim, or a green space that is clean and safe, These are all things people should have access to in our communities. They aren't just physical infrastructure. They help ensure we stay healthy, both physically and mentally. But more than that, they're places to come together, providing a sense of local pride and belonging. For even the best professional sports people, their journey starts at home. Take Alan Shearer, who played for local boys team Cramlington Juniors on his path to Premier League and international stardom, and become a Newcastle United record goal scorer along the way. Cramlington Juniors has hundreds of children playing at all standards, knowing that they are treading the path of a local legend. And not to be outdone is New Hartley Juniors. New Hartley Juniors has seen 3 of its alumni go on to lift the League Cup. Most recently, of course, was Big Dan Byrne, a literal giant who scored the first goal in Newcastle's League Cup final victory this year. And the thing is, Madam Deputy Speaker, you'll never ever beat Dan Byrne. He's from Blythe. He who cut his teeth playing locally before pushing trolleys at Asda, working his way through the leagues to make his England international debut this year. And whilst today's bill is not to make Dan an asset of community value in his own right, to be very clear, any amendment as such would be supported by me. But the contribution of local sports clubs goes far beyond their role in producing international sports stars, though to be clear, they do. It's more than that. Like Cramlington Town Football Club stepping in during school holidays to ensure that local kids get a day of activity, but also a hot meal. Or Killingworth Juniors, who provide a space for Gaelic football to be played by the local Irish community. West Allotment, who through their fan-owned model provide both value on and off the pitch. Or Bates Cottages Cricket Club, who do walking cricket for those over 50. Concordia Leisure Centre, who take on local SEN children on supported internships. Countless ways sports facilities are making our communities better day in, day out. But in far too many communities, these vital facilities have slowly disappeared. Across the country, hundreds of swimming pools, leisure centres, sports clubs have shut their doors, leaving not just empty buildings or an abandoned pitch. They leave a gap in the lives of local people, forcing them to travel miles away from home to access sports in the next town over, or to simply do without. The disappearance of sporting facilities can be devastating, often leaving scars in places that do not heal. But there is a better way. Community ownership gives people the opportunity to save the local assets that we value the most, bring them into community hands and run them in the interests of local people. And there are already many community-owned sporting facilities of all kinds, not just managing to survive, but truly thriving, because they're uniquely attuned to the needs and wants of local people. Now, Labour has already committed to introducing a new community right to buy, which will give communities a much better chance at ownership when these assets are available, giving them first right of refusal. But to be eligible for this right, assets need to first be listed as community assets, as assets of community value. And it's an important process, but it's also a complex one. It's inconsistent and it's time-consuming for groups of volunteers. Now, I believe that some assets are so important to local communities that they should be able to bypass this process and instead automatically be designated as assets of community value. And that's why, with the Cooperative Party, I'm campaigning to do just that. Ensuring that sporting facilities are automatically eligible for community ownership so that they can be safeguarded, not just now, but for generations to come. And this doesn't just make the process significantly more straightforward for communities wishing to own their local sporting facilities. It also sends a clear message from government that these assets, which keep people healthy, which provide opportunities and which bring people together, they matter and they are worth protecting. And most fundamentally, community ownership is about ensuring that the assets people and places value can't just be taken away, that communities have all the things they deserve, the things that make them unique. Local places made up of local assets owned by local people. This can be our vision, one that shapes communities that are better, that are stronger, and that truly stand the test of time.
The question is that the honourable member had leave to bring in the bill. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare and bring in the bill?
Michael Wheeler, Chris Vince, Sally Jameson, Annalise Midgley, Dame Karen Bradley, Ellie Chowns, Joe Morris, Gareth Snell, Andrew Pakes, Alex Sobel and myself.
Emma Foodie. Nice straight line.
Assets of community value, sports facilities bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday the 16th of May.
Friday the 16th of May. I'll just allow the front benches a few moments to swap over. I will now proceed to read the orders of the day.
Data Use and Access Bill Lords, as amended in the Public Bill Committee, to be considered.
Now.
We will begin with Government New Clause 16, with which it will be convenient to consider the other selected new clauses and amendments as listed on the selection paper. I call the Minister to move Government New Clause 16. Minister Chris Bryant.
Madam Deputy Speaker, earlier I appeared as a DCMS Minister and now I appear as a DCIT Minister. And I hate to embarrass the House, but you get two bouts of me today because I'm going to start with the government amendments and then once I've heard the arguments from people advancing other amendments, I'll speak to them later on in the debate. So if I haven't covered some of the subjects, I will get back to them later if I don't cover them in this initial speech. Well, I mean, he's so enticing. I hope he's going to be nicer to me than the chair of the committee was earlier.
I'm sure that the chair of the committee and I will always be nice to the Minister, but I was only going to say that I have experienced the slight schizophrenia which he has referred to in holding two roles in the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology and DCMS at the same time. Although he is appearing as a DCIT Minister this afternoon, can he assure the House that he will not forget his responsibilities as a DCMS Minister for the creative industries?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I model myself in all things on him, apart from the fact that I left the Tory party many, many years ago, and it's about time that he came over here. Look, No, he could come over here. No, I'm not going back over there. Anyway. No, the point I was going to make was I'm fully cognizant of my duties. I think he's referring to the AI copyright issues that we'll be addressing fairly shortly. And actually, I like the fact that I'm in both departments because I think it means that I can bring the knowledge of both sectors to bear on each other. And if we're lucky and if we work hard at it, I hope that I'll be able to persuade him that we can come to a win-win solution. As he knows well, this is not easy. And I think when I had my very first meeting with him after I was appointed in the post, he said, this is not an easy area to resolve. I hope I'm not breaking your confidence, but he's smiling. Madam Deputy Speaker, I was meant to start with, I beg to move that the clause be read a second time. Madam Deputy Speaker, I do have a large number of very different topics to cover, and I'm conscious that many members may think this is the data bill. We'll be dealing with an awful lot of subjects this afternoon which don't really feel as if they're anything to do with things that were in the original version of the data bill that was brought forward by the honourable gentleman and the previous honourable member and is now before the House. But I hope members will bear with me. I intend to address the government's amendments as follows. First of all, AI and copyright. Secondly, deepfakes. Thirdly, the National Underground Assets Register. And then smart data and other minor and technical amendments. So starting on AI and intellectual property. As members know, it was never the government's intention to legislate on this issue in this bill at all. It is a complex and important issue, which is why we have consulted on a package of measures, and that consultation had over 11,500 responses, which we are still considering. I would point out that I've heard several honourable members have said to me, will you remove the opt-out clause in the bill? I need to make it absolutely clear there is no such opt-out clause in the bill. We never laid one in the bill, so there's not an opt-out clause to remove. As members will also know, the Lords inserted a set of amendments on AI and copyright, which we removed at committee stage, and which reappear on the order paper today as new clauses 2 to 6 tabled by the Honourable Member for Harpenden and Berkhamsted. A similar measure has been tabled as new clause 14 by my honourable friend for Leeds Central. We oppose all these new clauses today for several reasons. Firstly, they preempt the results of the consultation, and it must surely be better to legislate on this complex subject in the round rather than piecemeal. The amendments are also, I would argue, unworkable. New Clause 5, for instance, would make the Information Commissioner the regulator of transparency requirements, but the ICO has neither the skills nor the resources to perform this function. Obviously, transparency requirements without an effective enforcement mechanism are worse than useless, which means the other clauses on transparency are also unworkable in this context. The new clauses also fail to address some of the most important questions in this area. As I say, they effectively legislate piecemeal rather than in the round. Whenever Parliament has done that in the past, it has rued the day, and I think the same is true today. Oh yes, of course.
But doesn't he understand the urgency when it comes to all of this? Generative AI is currently ingesting our whole creative catalogue as we speak. We need something in place just now. We can't wait for a year for reports or 3 years for legislation. We need action now. Does he not understand that something needs to be brought forward here today and these amendments offer that?
Well, I don't think they do because I don't think they work. And you need to legislate in the round, as I say, not piecemeal. But I would also make the point to him that there's a bit of a two-edged sword here, because I've been repeatedly told, and I understand the point, that there's no legal uncertainty as to the copyright status of works that are being scraped. But at the same time, people are saying that they do want legislative change. Now, those two things cannot be true at the same time. I am very determined to get us to a better place on this, as I'll perhaps explain in a couple of moments. But if I just refer to New Clause 2, because I think there's an intention to push this to a vote later on, which I would urge honourable members not to do, but I don't always get my way. On New Clause 2, I mean, it basically says that people should comply with the law. People should comply with the law. I mean, it's a simple fact. People should comply with the law. You can't legislate to tell people that they should comply with the law. The law is the law. And if none of these amendments are carried today, the law will remain as it is today. Copyright law in the UK will be robust and clear. And just for the absolute avoidance of doubt, some people have talked to me about text and data mining exceptions, which, as members will know, exist, for instance, in the European Union. There is a text and data mining exception already in UK law. It was introduced in 2014 by a statutory instrument amending the Copyright and Patent Act of, I think, 1988, in section 29A, as it now is. But that is a text and data mining exception for the sole purpose of research for a non-commercial purpose. I think that is absolutely clear in law, and I don't think it needs any clarifying. Behind me. Oh, yes, of course.
I thank the Minister for giving way, and I understand the point he's making about existing copyright law, but as he has said, the government did open a consultation that has, for many of our constituents who work in the creative industries, prefigured a substantial change in copyright when it comes to AI. So does he see the merit that many of us see in being clear that the principles behind copyright, that our creative constituents should be able to benefit and protect their own works, they benefit from it and protect from it, are what is at stake here? Could he at least commit that that is what this government wants too when he says that the law is standing? Because I think he can understand why people are concerned and where these concerns are coming from that have merited these amendments.
Oh, I completely understand the concerns, and in very large measure I share the concerns, namely that we want to make sure in this very fast changing world that the creative industries in the UK are able to be remunerated for the work that they have produced. We're not in the business of giving away other people's work to a third party for nothing. That would be to sell our birthright for a mess of pottage, to use a term from an old translation of the Bible, and we're determined that we're not going to do that. But as she will know, I have said, and I know several other members have heard me say this many times before, The only circumstance in which we would advance with the package of measures that were included in the consultation is if we were to believe that we were advancing the cause of the creative industries in the UK rather than providing danger or legal peril to them. And that's why some of the things I'm going to say in a moment I think will be of assistance, because we do want to get to a place where it is easier for the creative industries, whether they are a very large business with very deep pockets able to use lawyers, or a very small individual person working in the creative industry, such as an individual photographer or painter, to be able to assert their rights, to protect their rights, to say if they want to, no, you can't scrape my material for large language learning, or you can if you've remunerated me. Now that remuneration might happen via a collective licensing scheme, or it might happen individually. Either way, we want to get to more licensing rather than less licensing. And as I've said again several times at this dispatch box, we have looked at what has happened in the EU, we've looked at what is happening in the United States of America, and we believe that although the EU said that their package was designed to deliver more licensing, it hasn't led to more licensing, it hasn't led to more remuneration of the creative industries, and we want to avoid that pitfall. Madam Deputy Speaker, as I said, I take the concerns of the creative industries seriously, both as a DCIP Minister and as a DCMS Minister. Of course I do. I agree, we agree, the government agrees that transparency is absolutely key. We want to see more licensing of content. We believe that the UK is a creative content superpower, and we want UK AI companies to flourish on the basis of high-quality data. I make this point in particular because I've spoken to quite a few publishing companies who are UK companies, in particular companies like Francis and Osborne, who are largely an academic publisher. As members will know, the UK is the largest exporter of books in the world. They are deliberately going about trying to get all their material licensed to AI companies for two reasons. One, because they want to be remunerated for the work that they provided. But secondly, just as importantly, they make the point they want AI to come up with good answers. It's a bit like a pipe. If you put dirty water into a pipe, dirty water will come out the other end. If you put good data into AI, good answers will come out of AI. And it's a really important part of why we want to make sure that we have strong AI that is based on high-quality data. And a lot of that is premium content from our creative industries. Madam Deputy Speaker, we also agree that the government must keep an open mind and must take full account of the economic evidence. That is why we have tabled new clauses 16 and 17, which set out binding commitments to assess the impacts of any and all proposals and to consider and report on the key areas raised in debate. That includes any and all options that were involved in the consultation that we published after the amendments were tabled in the House of Lords. As it takes forward the commitments made by these amendments, the government will consider all potential policy options. I want to be very clear that the government has not prejudged the outcome of the consultation and takes the need to consider and reflect on the best approach for all parties very seriously. Members will have read New Clause 17, I'm sure, but it requires the government to report on four things: technical solutions that would enable copyright owners to control whether their copyright works can be used to develop AI. If she'll just let me finish this paragraph, because it might read better in Hansard. Access, well, it won't now, because I've added this bit, so it's ruined, isn't it? I might as well give way to her.
This idea of technical solutions is a really important question, but my challenge is, if it is those, I've spoken to some of the big tech companies that are pushing for that and saying that it's hard for them to do it at scale, but yet saying that creators can do it. My challenge is, why can't the tech companies be leading on an opt-in system for creatives? And I would hand that back to the Minister.
The spokesperson of the Liberal Democrat Party, you'll be speaking very shortly as well. Minister.
I know, but she's wonderful, so we'll let her, or you'll let her. Look, it's a really important point, which is that I believe that it cannot be impossible for us to get to a technical solution to this. If somebody can develop AI, and people are now developing AI on their laptops, especially following DeepSeek. You don't need massive computes to be able to do it. Then people should be able to develop a very simple system, as I've said before, whereby all creatives who are copyright owners should be able to assert their rights very simply across all platforms without any great exertion of effort. That's what I want to achieve. Now, she's quite right to raise this question. So what are we going to do after this? We say we're going to report on this. Well, if we were to report, it says we'll report in 12 months. If we were to report in 12 months' time that we've done absolutely nothing, I think everybody would rightly rant and rave at us. It is our intention that the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology and the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport will together be coordinating a special task force specifically to look at how we can facilitate and incentivise and enable the development of these technical solutions. If we can get there, I suspect opt-out will look remarkably like opt-in. The second thing that we're going to report on in 12 months in New Clause 17, Madam Deputy Speaker, is access to data for AI developers to train AI systems in the UK. Thirdly is transparency. And fourthly, measures to facilitate licensing of copyright works for AI training. This publication will be required within 12 months of royal assent and will be laid, of course, before Parliament. New Clause 16, Madam Deputy Speaker, supplements these reports with a full economic impact assessment that will go further than previous assessments and present an analysis of the economic impact of a range of policy options available in this space, supported by the additional evidence that the Government has received in response to its consultation. I would argue that these reporting requirements are important. They mean we will have to engage at pace and in depth with each of these issues, and we will do that. We are determined to find and incentivise technical solutions that support our objectives in this area, and I believe that if we do that, we could be a world leader. I can also confirm that, as I said earlier, that the two Secretaries of State will be convening working groups to tackle each of these issues. Let me be clear. I have heard people say that we are legislating to water down copyright. That is simply not true. If members support the Government's position today, the UK's copyright law will remain precisely as robust tomorrow as it is today. For activities in the UK, people will, in law, only be able to use copyright material if they are permitted and licensed to do so, or where a copyright exception exists, such as the existing copyright exceptions for education, for public libraries, or for non-commercial work. I'll move on, Madam Deputy Speaker, to the issue of purport. I thought that might engender something.
It's a pleasure to serve on the Bill Committee. On the point on timelines within the amendment, the Minister says both would be before the end of the period of 12 months. As other members have mentioned, there is a lot of concern about what may happen. So I would just ask the Minister if he anticipates it will take a year or whether he might be able to work faster so that more reassurance can be given, although I accept there needs to be a thorough consultation and examination of the responses.
Well, obviously, there'll be a series of different things that are going to happen. We will have to respond to the consultation at some point. I expect that I'm not telling the Select Committee, but I would guess that the Select Committee would want to do some kind of response to that as well. And in the meantime, we will be doing this working group. I'm very happy to keep the House updated on how that work progresses, but I don't want to commit to producing something before 12 months without being absolutely certain that I can. But the requirement is, by law, or if our amendment is carried today, it will be a requirement by law that we do produce that within 12 months. I fully get the point about urgency. I mean, this has been hanging around as an issue, as the Honourable Member for Morden said, knows well. This has been hanging around as an issue for some considerable period of time. We in the UK have perhaps been a little slow, but I want to make sure that we get it right rather than legislate piecemeal. Sure.
Way. Just very briefly, and apologies if I've missed this, but has he outlined when the government will be responding to the consultation?
No, I haven't. She hadn't missed anything. Obviously, we would want to do so as soon as possible, but we've got 11,500 consultation responses to consider. Incidentally, I mean, there are some issues which have hardly been referred to in the public debate on this at all. One of them, which I know Actors Equity is pursuing quite understandably, that we referred to in the consultation, is around the right to a personality, which does exist in some states in the United States of America. It's quite complicated to legislate for, which is one of the reasons that we consulted on it. We've also consulted on the question, which again nobody has referred to in the public debate, around whether or not a work that comes out that is generated by AI has any copyright attached to it, and if so, who owns that copyright? It's slightly moot in British law. You could argue that British law of copyright has always presumed that a copyright only applies where a work is the expression of an individual. So you could argue that therefore it doesn't apply to AI-generated material, but there are other elements. I think it's Section 9A of the Copyright and Patent Act, which says that machine-generated material can have copyrights attached to it. So that's one of the other issues that we want to address. And as I said earlier, one of the issues that nobody has yet come up with an answer to is how we would provide proper enforcement of whatever transparency requirements we come up with. I'm conscious too that in discussions I've had with European counterparts, including my Spanish counterpart and members of the European Commission, there's some concern about precisely what they will do by virtue of transparency. This is made more complicated by the advent of DeepSeek, for a whole series of different reasons, which I'm happy to explain at some other point. You need to end up with a transparency system which is both effective and proportionate. Simply dumping a list of millions and millions of URLs that have been visited on the internet, I don't think is either effective or proportionate. So we will have to come up with somebody. Yes, I did hear a voice. Yes.
Thank you. I thank the Minister for giving way. Does he envisage whether any model of enforcement around transparency will be compulsory and not a voluntary system?
Well, yes, I would. Enforcement by nature would have to be compulsory, but we're sort of running ahead of ourselves because at the moment nobody's actually come up with a system of having an enforcement mechanism. Who would do it? What body would do it? How that body would be resourced, or any of those issues. So that's one of the things that we need to look into, and is one of the elements of the consultation. Madam Deputy Speaker, I said that I was going to move on to another subject, so I am, which is the issue of purported intimate images, which refers to Amendment 34 from the Government in relation to the creation of intimate images or deep fakes. Earlier on in the bill's passage, my colleague Lord Ponsonby added a new offence of creating purported intimate images without consent or reasonable belief in consent. I'm sure all honourable members would agree that this is a really important addition to the bill. We introduced the offence of requesting the creation of purported images without consent or reasonable belief in consent in committee, as honourable members who were on the bill committee with me will know. It seems axiomatic that the courts should have the power to deprive offenders of the image and anything containing it relating or connected to the offence. This is already the case for the creating offence, which was introduced in the House of Lords. Government Amendment number 34 amends the sentencing code to achieve that for the requesting offence. It ensures that the existing regime of court powers to deprive offenders of property also applies to images and devices containing the image related to the requesting offence. Madam Deputy Speaker, I move on to the question of National Underground Asset Register. Next, we have tabled a series of amendments to clauses 56, 57, 58 and 59 to reflect discussions on the NUAR with devolved governments. These amendments will require that the Secretary of State obtain the consent of Welsh ministers and the Department for Infrastructure in Northern Ireland before making regulations in relation to the provisions, rather than merely consult them. Cooperation with devolved governments has been consistent and constructive throughout the bill's passage. We have secured legislative consent from Scotland and the Senedd in Wales voted in favour of granting the bill legislative consent only yesterday. We regret that, for procedural reasons, the process with Northern Ireland has not yet reached the stage of legislative consent. However, we're working constructively with the Department of Finance to ensure we can make progress as quickly as possible. We continue to work closely with the Northern Ireland Executive to secure legislative consent and to ensure citizens and businesses of Northern Ireland feel the full benefits of the bill. And a few other areas, Madam Deputy Speaker, before I finish. I turn to the amendments we're tabling to help ensure that smart data schemes can function optimally and that Part 1 is as clear as possible. Amendments to fee charging under clauses 11 and 15 follow extensive stakeholder engagement and will maximise the commercial viability of smart data systems by enabling regulations to make tailored provision on fee charging within each smart data scheme. Amendments 19, 20 and 21, for example, enable fees charged to exceed expenses where appropriate. This is important to fulfil the commitment in the National Payments Vision to establish a long-term regulatory framework for open banking. Outside of smart data, Government Amendment 35 adds references to investigating crime to existing references in the Data Protection Act to detecting or preventing crime. This will bring these references into line with other parts of the legislation. And with that, Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that the amendments and the new clause be read a second time.
The question is that the Government new clause 16 be read a second time, and I call the Shadow Minister, Dr. Ben Spencer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's a privilege to respond to this debate on behalf of His Majesty's official opposition and to speak to new clauses and amendments tabled on its behalf. This is an ambitious piece of legislation which will enable us to harness data, the currency of our digital age, and use data in a way which drives the economy and enhances the delivery of public services. Since its original inception in the last Parliament under the Conservatives, the bill has also become the platform for tackling some of the most pressing social and technological issues of our time. Many of these are reflected in amendments to the bill, which are the subject of debate today. And I'll start with new clause 20 on behalf of His Majesty's official opposition. How do we regulate the interaction of AI models with creative works? I must pay tribute to the work of many members on both sides of this House and any other place who have passionately raised the concerns of creatives and the risks posed by AI models to their livelihoods. We on these benches are clear. This is not a zero-sum game. Our fantastic creative and our fantastic tech industries have the potential to turbocharge economic growth, and the last government rightly supported them both. The creative and technology sectors need and deserve certainty. Certainty provides the foundation for investment and growth. Our amendment achieves certainty by requiring the government to publish a series of plans on the transparency of AI models' use of copyrighted works, removing market barriers for smaller AI market entrants, digital watermarking, and most importantly of all, a clear restatement of the application of copyright law to AI modelling activities. Now, I can't help but have a sense of déjà vu in relation to the government and its new clause 17. We're glad that the government has acted on several of the actions we called for at committee stage. But once again, they've chosen PR over effective policy. Amongst all the spin, in effect, the government has announced a plan to respond to their own consultation. How innovative. What's starkly missing from government new clauses is a commitment to make clear that copyright law applies to the use of creative content by AI models. This is the primary concern raised with me by industry representatives. The government has created uncertainty around the application of copyright law to AI modelling through its ham-fisted consultation. So I offer the Minister another opportunity now. Will he formally confirm the application of copyright law to protect the use of creative works by AI? Will he provide legal certainty and send a strong signal to our creative industries that they will not be asked to pay the price for AI growth?
Yes.
Well, I thank him for making that statement at the dispatch box. And as he knows, we need to have that formally in writing as a statement from the government to make absolutely clear, given what's been put in the consultation, which has muddied the waters.
I'm sorry, I said it in my speech. I've said it several times in several debates previously.
Well, I'd be grateful then if you could ask why the uncertainty remains in creatives, because regarding the application of copyright in this area, why do we need to move things forwards then? Turning to Government Amendment 34 and others, I want to take a moment again to congratulate my noble friend Baroness Owen for the tremendous work she's done in ensuring that clauses criminalising the creation and requests for sexually explicit deepfake images made it into this bill. And I thank the government for their constructive approach that it's now taking in this area of the bill.
I should have said earlier that one of the changes that we made, as he knows, in committee was there had been a clause for soliciting such an image. We changed that from soliciting to requesting, because soliciting might, in certain circumstances, require the exchange of money or something like that. And that's why we have the requesting offence.
Again, I thank him for his clarification and reiteration of that point, and again, the work that he's done working with colleagues in terms of taking forwards this issue, which I think is in unison across the House. I now turn to speak to new clause 21, directions to public authorities on recording of sex data. Now, you don't need to be a doctor to know that data accuracy is critically important, particularly when it comes to health, research, or provision of tailored services based on protected characteristics such as sex or age. Accuracy of data must be at the heart of this bill. And nowhere has this been more high profile or important than the debate over the collection and use of sex and gender data. And I want to thank the charity Sex Matters and Noble Lords of Buffnott and Lucas for the work they've done to highlight the need for accurate data and its relevance for digital verification system proposed within this bill. Of course.
The honourable member for giving way. The recent decision by the Supreme Court that, according to the Equality Act 2010, sex in the Act referred to biological sex at birth, regardless of whether they hold a gender recognition certificate or identify as a different gender, has left many trans people already feeling hurt and unseen. I would suggest, and I wonder if he agrees with me, that any digital verification service and ID must consider trans people and not risk making them feel like any more like their country is forgetting who they are.
Well, I thank the member opposite for her intervention. I'm going to come shortly to the impact on all people in terms of the decision of the Supreme Court. Our amendment's focus and scope within this bill is simple. The Supreme Court ruling made clear public bodies must collect data on biological sex in order to comply with their duties under the Equality Act. Our amendment ensures this data is recorded and used correctly in accordance with the law. This is about data accuracy, not ideology. Our amendment is based in part on the works of Professor Alice Sullivan, who conducted a very important review with deeply concerning findings regarding inaccurate data collection and conflation of gender identity with biological sex data. She found people missed off health screening, risks to research integrity, inaccurate policing records and management through the criminal justice system, and many other concerns. These present risks to everyone, irrespective of biological sex, gender identity, or acquired gender. Trans people, like everyone else, need health screening based on their biological sex. Trans people need protecting from sexual predators too, and have a right to dignity and respect. The Sullivan report shows beyond doubt that the concerns of the last government and leader of the opposition were entirely justified. The government has had Professor Sullivan's report since September last year, but still the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology have not made a formal statement regarding it or addressed the concerns raised, which is even more surprising given its relevance to the bill today. The correction of public authority data on sex is necessary and urgent, but it's made even more critical with the implementation of digital verification services within this bill. With pleasure.
Gentleman for giving way, and the Shadow Minister, because he is making an important point on the Sullivan Review and also on the Supreme Court judgment, which I appreciate. But I'd like to say that there are conversations on government, in government and with colleagues on these benches to ensure that the Supreme Court judgment and the Sullivan Review is implemented properly across all departments, and I hope to be working with them on that.
Hear, hear.
Well, I thank her for her intervention and all the work that she and colleagues on both sides of the House on this area. And I hope that we do see the Sullivan report implemented and its findings implemented as soon as possible. And part of the implementation will be made possible if colleagues across the House can support our amendment today. Because the implementation of digital verification services, for them to be brought in, it's important that the data used to inform them is based on accurate and correct data. The digital verification could be used to access single-sex services, so it needs to be correct. And if sex and gender data is conflated, as we know it is in many data sets, then a failure to act today will bring in self-ID by the back door, which, to be clear, has never been the legal position in the UK and would conflict with the ruling of the Supreme Court. Our amendment is simple and straightforward. It's about the accurate collection and use of sex data and rules to ensure data is of the right standard when used in digital verification services, ensuring single-sex services are not undermined. Now, finally, on to new Clause 9, Secretary of State's duty to review the age of consent for data processing under the UK GDPR. Madam Deputy Speaker, what can or should children be permitted to consent to when using or signing up to online platforms and social media? How do we ensure children are protected? How do we prevent harms from the use of inappropriate social media itself, separate to that of the content provided? How do we help our children in a world where social media can import the school, the playground, the changing room, the influencer, the stranger, the groomer, the radical, the hostile state actor, all into the family home? Our children are the first generation growing up in a digital world, exposed to information and weaponized algorithms on a scale that simply did not exist for their parents. In government, we took measures to improve protections and regulate harmful content online, and I'm delighted to see those measures now coming into force. But there's increasing evidence that exposure to inappropriate social media platforms themselves is causing harm, and children as young as 13 may not be able to regulate and process the exposure to these sites in a safe and proportionate way. I'm sure every member across this House would have been contacted by parents concerned over the impact of social media on their children, and we recognise that this is a challenging area to regulate. How do we target and define the risky and inappropriate social media platforms and ensure education and health tech, or indeed closed direct messaging services, do not fall within scope? How effective are provisions already, and can age verification be made to work for under 16s? What IDs are available to use? What would the impact of the Online Safety Act be now that it's coming online? What are the lessons from its implementation, and where does it need strengthening? And finally, how do we support parents and teachers educating and guiding children so that they are able and prepared to enter the digital world, whatever age they choose and are able to do so? The government needs to take action to ensure appropriate safeguards are in place for our children, not through outright bans or blanket restrictions, but with an evidence-based approach that takes into account the recent legal changes and need for effective enforcement, including age verifications to those under 16. Too often in this place, we focus on making things more illegal rather than the reasons for lack of enforcement in the first place. There's no point in immediate restrictions if they cannot be implemented. Of course, I give way.
Thank the Shadow Minister for giving way, and I agree with all of the points that he's making about keeping our children safe online. So I challenge him why it is that his NC19 only commits to a review of the age of the digital age of data consent, so that we're raising the age from 13 to 16 for when parental consent is no longer required. why he doesn't support the Liberal Democrat amendment NC1 that would actually start to implement this change already. We can still, through implementation, do all the things he's doing. What's the delay for?
I thank her for her intervention. And in terms of new clause 1, so there's a few issues with this clause. One is in terms of the scope, in terms of definition of networking services, and to ensure that things like WhatsApp, for example, aren't captured within it. I think if you look at the amendment which we put forwards, there are challenges to implementing this area. There's no point clicking our fingers and saying let's change the age of digital consent without understanding what the barriers to implementation are, without understanding if age verification can work in this sort of context. What we don't want to happen is create a system where essentially people can just quite simply get around it. We need the government to do the work in terms of setting it up so that we can move towards a position of raising it from 13 to 16. Of course.
I thank the Shadow Minister for giving way. The press has obviously been briefed by Conservatives that the Conservatives are pushing for a ban on social media for under 16s. It seems that actually what's being suggested is a review of the digital age of consent to perhaps increase it to 16. The two are very different, and I wonder whether the tough talk in the press matches what's actually being proposed by the opposition today.
So I've been very clear on this, and I think it's important in an area as complex as this to look at the detail and the nuance in terms of the challenges around, in terms of the challenges, right? Well, it's very easy to create a new clause where you sort of click your fingers and say, let's make something more legal, let's bring in X, Y, Z restriction. As a responsible opposition, we're looking at the detail and the complexities around implementing something like this. So I've been asked a few questions. Perhaps you may want to listen to the rationale in terms of, he might want to listen to the rationale in terms of how we're approaching this. So one question is how you define social media. How do you, because for example, within scope of social media comes direct messaging services such as WhatsApp, things like YouTube. There are obviously social media platforms which I think all of us are particularly concerned about, Snapchat, TikTok. What we don't want to happen is in changing the age of digital consent, you end up capturing lower risk social media platforms, which we recognise as already a clear need and benefit for. So, for example, educational technology, health technology. And that's before you start looking at actually does age verification or can age verification work, particularly in the 13 to 16 age group. I give way to the Minister.
Sorry, I'm getting a bit lost. Does the Minister think, and does the Conservative Party think, that the digital age of consent should rise from 13 to 16 or not?
Mr. Bryant, so Dr. Ben Spencer is the Shadow Minister. Dr. Ben Spencer.
I think it's wishful thinking on the Minister's behalf in this debate, Madam Deputy Speaker. So if looking through the amendment that we put forward, what it says is that one needs to look at the desirability of raising the digital age of consent to data processing from 13 to 16 in terms of its impact, particularly on issues such as the social and educational development on children, but also the viability of doing so in terms of the fallout and seeing the shaking out of the Online Safety Act and with regards to the digital age verification services. And should there not be evidence to demonstrate that this is necessary, then to raise the digital age of consent to 13 to 16. So it might be that over the course of the next 6 months, the shaking out of the Online Safety Act demonstrates that this intervention isn't necessary. Okay? It may be that over the course of the next 6 months, concerns around which particular high-risk social media platforms change as technology evolves. So what we're saying is to do the work with a view to raising it in 18 months, unless there is evidence to prove to the contrary. I think, like I say, I think I've made it crystal clear, and if the Minister would choose to look at the amendment, the new clause, rather than chuckling away in the corner, he might see the strategy in terms of we're taking forward. Anyway, I'll move on. Our amendment also addresses some of the concerns.
I thank the Shadow Minister for giving way. He is, as ever, extremely polite in his presentation and in his dealing with interventions, but I'm not sure he dealt with my intervention. which was basically, is the Conservative Party's position, as briefed to the press, that they wish to ban social media for under 16s, or that they wish to have a review on raising the age of data consent? It can't be both.
I thank him for his intervention. I will say again, the position is that following a careful look at the evidence regarding the desirability and validity of doing so, taking into findings regarding the impact and the implementation of the Online Safety Act, age verification and how one defines social media, particularly high-risk social groups, unless there is direct evidence to show that raising the age from 13 to 16 is unnecessary, which there may be, then we should raise it from 13 to 16. If that hasn't provided clarity, he's very welcome to intervene on me again, and I'll try and explain it a third time. Yeah, I think members have sort of got the grasp. Anyway, so this amendment will also tackle some of the concerns at the heart of the campaign for Jules Law. And I'd like to pay tribute to the work Ellen Room has done in this area. I'm very sympathetic to the tragic circumstances leading this campaign, and I welcome the additional powers granted to the Coroner's Office within this bill. But I know that they do not fully address Ellen Room's concerns. The government needs to explain how they can be sure that data will be retained in the context of these tragedies so that the coroner will be able to make sure, even if there are delays, get access to them in future. I welcome the Minister in his wrapping up, if he could provide an answer to that and any further work that needs to be done in this area. More broadly, with regards to parental access to children's data, I do believe there are difficult challenges regarding Article 8 rights in relation to privacy and transparency, especially for children aged 16 to 17 as they approach adulthood. Our amendment addresses some of these concerns raised, as it would also put in place the groundwork to de facto raise the digital age of consent for inappropriate social media to 16 within 18 months, rendering the request for parental access to young teenage accounts obsolete. Madam Deputy Speaker, I urge colleagues across the House to support all our amendments today as a balanced, proportionate and effective response to a generational challenge. The bill and the votes today are an opportunity for our Parliament, often referred to as the conscience of our country, to make clear our position on some of the most pressing social and technological issues of our time.
Chair of the Science, Innovation and Technology Committee, Chetan Warren.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I would like also to thank colleagues in the other place and in this House who have worked so hard to improve the bill. By modernising data infrastructure and governance, this bill seeks to unlock the secure, efficient use of data while promoting innovation across sectors. As a tech evangelist, as well as the chair of the Science, Innovation and Technology Select Committee, I welcome it. And I am pleased to see colleagues from the Select Committee, the member for Stoke-on-Trent South and the member for North West Hampshire here in this debate. Having spent many unhappy hours when working for Ofcom trying to find out where British Telecom's ducks were actually buried, I offer a very personal welcome to the National Underground Asset Register. Now, and I thank the Minister for his work on this bill as well as for his opening comments. And I agree with the Minister that there's much to welcome in this bill, but much of the second reading was consumed by discussion on AI and copyright. And I know many intend to speak on this today, so I will just briefly set out my view. I think the problem with the government's proposals on AI and copyright is that they give all the power to the tech platforms, who, let's be frank, have a great deal of power already, as well as trillions of dollars in stock market capitalization and a determination to return value to their shareholders. What they do not have is an incentive to design appropriate technology for transparency and rights reservation if they believe that in its absence they will have free access to our fantastic curators' ingenuity. It is essential that the Minister convinces them that if they do not deliver this technology, and I agree with him that it is highly possible to do so, that he will impose it. Perhaps you could announce an open competition with a supplier contract and as the prize for whatever innovative company designs something. The Science Select Committee, sitting with the Culture Select Committee, have heard from small companies who can do just that. The tech giants may not like it, but I often say that the opposite of regulation is not no regulation, it is bad regulation. And if the tech platforms do not lead, they will be obliged to follow. Because the House will not allow the copyright of our fantastic creators